Yeah, welcome. Great to see you all. I thought we would start off our agenda with our round robin, and like Jason said, we'll give ourselves some extra time here just because I think there's so much to catch up on. So we'll just go around in a circle, and the first person I have is Arthur. So.
All right, thanks. Good to see everybody. I've missed a meeting or two lately, but so basically, as I was just mentioning, I'm planting an oak tree on my property, my fire ravaged property. So that feels good. So that's a personal thing. And as far as projects, I'm making good progress on the CAL FIRE project that I'm working on. That's looking at long-term fire patterns and vegetation patterns and bringing those two together. So I'll probably at some point I'll present those here at some level. But I finished up. There's one of our study sites is out northeast of Guerneville, and that was pretty interesting because I think I showed some of that a few months back. And now I'm working on up in the Napa area, Atlas Peak. And so, yeah, it's a fairly long project. We actually decided to take a year's extension. So we actually have another couple of years to finish it up. But who knows what next fall will be like. So good to have a little extra wiggle room there. But that's about it for me. I'll keep it short, seeing how many people are here.
Cool, thanks. Terry?
Oh, thank you, everyone. Hi, Terry Shore, Greenbelt Alliance. I know I've been participated, but I haven't been on the call for a while. So I'm so happy to join in here, this speaker. I guess I'll just mention one thing that maybe we could talk about offline is I'm working on a research paper on the role of green belts in reducing wildfire risk, particularly to our communities. And so I would, if anyone's interested in sharing any stories that you might have about that, that would be helpful. I would love to talk to you about it. Thank you.
Awesome. That's great. Devin?
Hi, everyone. Devin Friedfeld from Pepperwood Preserve. Been doing a lot of pile burning. We thinned 120 something acres with the help of Fred and the great tree tenders, and we did a bunch of piles. So I burned about 500 piles this year.
Oh my God.
Yeah, my guess is there's like 2,000. So I'm feel like I'm a quarter of the way done. Doing a pile burn workshop for any landowners that are interested in potentially doing pile burning on their property that maybe aren't super comfortable with it and want to try burning on someone else's property first. So I'm lending Pepperwood for anyone that. I'll throw the link to the sign up. It is already full, but we have a waitlist option. And if I get enough people on the waitlist, I will do another workshop. So if there's any interest, please just throw your name on the waitlist. And if I get enough interest, I will definitely do another one. We're doing a lot of planting too. We've gotten 3,000 grass plugs in the ground, and after the 2017 fire, we did a salvage logging project, and we have a restoration site that we're doing there. So we have about 200 black oak acorns that we planted out this winter also. Yep, I'll make it short. That's about it.
Sweet, thank you. And yes, a reminder to everyone to throw out information about any workshops or events that you have coming up. I'll capture them in the notes. So next up is Jill. And Jill, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Let's see. As far as forest group project, I didn't see it. Is Brianna on the call yet?
I don't see her yet.
Okay, and she may talk about this more. I talked to her a bit last week about the landowner boot camp idea. We had talked about it at the forest group. It must be 2 years ago, almost. And she had a similar idea to do at Shown Farms. But she's really open to hosting us to do the landowner version. out there. So I'm real excited about that. And she hoped to find out in the next week or so if the JC might be open in the fall. You know, like everything else, that'll remain to be seen, but possibly we could do that as soon as the fall, which would be a good timing. And I wanted to remind, I think Fred and Steve and Carleone were the people that had volunteered to assist with that. So just to remind you of the idea, and we'd be asking you to cover, you know, the usual topics, but in a more field-oriented and hands-on way. As far as the Gualala River Watershed Council, and I'm representing them and in the forest group. I also didn't see if Jeannie is online. Somebody.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, well, Jeannie, you might know more about this than I do. There's State Fish and Wildlife is, I think, organizing their fisheries grants programs now through a program called SHARP. And anyways, it's has just been revealed to us that Gualala River is kind of out of the running for participation in that program because they're restricting it to watersheds that presently have coho. So that was a setback, and we're disappointed because, of course, you know, we've been trying to get coho back into the Gualala. So anyways, if any of you know more or have suggestions for us on you know, how we might try and change that at some point in the future, please let me know. And I think that's it for me.
Okay, well, I'll just drop a note, Jill, to say that the Atascadero watershed, which is connected to the Russian River, recently had, or in the past couple of years, has had coho actually brought in and reintroduced there because it's been deemed such good habitat for them. They're doing that with the Army Corps and the like broodstock program, and so I don't know, maybe if you can like justify Gualala as being excellent habitat, perhaps they will move them up there too.
Well, that in the long term, you know, dream of the Watershed Council is reintroduction, but apparently, again, reintroduction is only open to watersheds that presently have coho. So, yeah, we're kind of in a vicious circle.
Yeah.
So anyways, if any of you are that do fisheries work have ideas now or later, please let me know.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Jason Mills.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, we've been busy as usual. We completed our big post-fire contract with the county, and Erica, who's joining us, might dive into more detail, but I think we got about 250 structures covered up for toxic runoff. And then we got going with some dozer repair work up in Sugarloaf. Sugarloaf Ridge got hit pretty hard by the PG&E crews and the CAL FIRE crews. So we worked with state parks and the RCD, and we were able to get some erosion control stuff implemented up there, try to keep the sediment out of the streams. But I'm seeing a lot of algae from the daylighting of the riparian veg and the nutrient runoff. So I'm kind of concerned about that. We've had some exciting projects going on in collaboration with Oakmont and working with a variety of partners over there, trying to come up with a sound plan for creating some defensible space along the borderlands with Annandale State Park, and also looking at riparian vegetation and how to approach sensitive habitats with fuel work. So that's been interesting, and I think it's rapidly evolving. And then the crew is getting all ready to go after broom. So we're going after, I don't know how many acres we're going to tackle this April, but we're going at populations in Sonoma, Marin, and now tentatively Napa as well. And then after that come the thistles, but I'll save that for the next meeting. Thanks, you guys.
Oh, that's a lot. Mark Newhauser?
Thank you. This is my first meeting, so I appreciate getting caught up to speed. I've been reading documents about the working group, and it's wonderful to see what everyone has been doing. And so I'm here to learn. My involvement has been with emergency preparedness in our community. I'm serving on the North Sonoma Valley Municipal Advisory Commission, along with Arthur and other colleagues in our area. So it's a brave new world of speaking up for the unincorporated area here in Sonoma Valley. But I'm really involved in emergency preparedness, had been previously involved in doing a lot of what Jason is doing now with doing erosion control and contaminant containment. And I witnessed a lot of destruction and perhaps even overreaction to fires when it comes to vegetation management. And so one of my interests are in quantifying the land use conversions post-fire. So that's going to be an ongoing interest of mine. Thank you.
Great. Wonderful to have you. Thanks, Mark. Jean. Oh, and Jean, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. There are a few things that are up right now. The Sierra Club Utility Wildfire Prevention Task Force, we've completed the white paper and an addendum, and we are seeking contact names and stories of people or companies that have had uncomfortable and bad experiences with PG&E related to their veg management and cutting down trees that are outside of their outside of the right of ways, and being disrespectful and not providing notice or opportunity to refuse or pay for damages. So if anybody has that, please contact me. It may help the lawsuit that will no doubt go forward. And the white paper is now with Sierra Club national attorneys. They're looking it over. Eventually there will probably be an amicus curiae brief that will go to Judge Alsop, who is in charge of all the money from the San Bruno disaster that relates to what PG&E will do, and what we're working towards getting them to do is upgrading their highly antiquated infrastructure, because the trees are okay. It's not the trees that are the problem, it's the infrastructure. So that's going on. My forest committee for Northern California Sierra Club, we are working diligently on creating a thinning guidance for the state. And I've just been talking with a lot of experts from the Sierras. So now I've got the coast and the Sierras and bringing it all together. And this is not going to be a dissertation or a thesis. It's going to be, maybe a 4 or 5 page working document that Sierra Club can promote for thinning processes. My Fire Safe Council in Ukiah, just getting going on looking at grant options. It's getting into grant season now. Thank you. That's it.
Great, thank you. Anne Krelock.
Hi, everyone. It's been a while since I've been to one of these meetings, but I'll try to be quick. back in December, we were able to secure some PG&E funding outside of the vegetation management budget for a decision support framework that we're working on now with CBI, Conservation Biology, with Deanne DiPietro, with Mark Tuckman, with Pepperwood, and with a variety of different partners to not reinvent the wheel, but to build on what everybody is already working on. So the countywide CWPP update and multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation planning efforts and Pepperwood's toolkit and other things, and incorporate all of that into this effort, which would basically just pump more money and expertise into the science behind vegetation management prioritization. And part of the idea here is to look at vegetation management through a variety of different lenses. So one could be oak woodland restoration. One could be telecommunications infrastructure. One could be water supply infrastructure, coho habitat, et cetera, and see where all those really high priority lenses overlap. And then you find some potential partners for moving forward on high priority areas where you get a good bang for your buck. So we're just in the process of kind of figuring out what this is all going to look like, who the project manager is going to be, and who's involved. But it should be really interesting. We're going to incorporate a lot of input and do a stakeholder assessment and talk to a lot of people about how to use this opportunity for the best benefit for everyone. So we're just kind of getting our feet on the ground now and figuring it out, but it'll be interesting. I'll be involved, but I won't be leading it. Susan and Jay will be involved as well, but we're going to have a lot of great experts really leading the charge. But yeah, so that's happening. The other piece of the puzzle is that we're going to put out kind of a beta version of it sooner rather than later for people to test out. It'll be available for the public to use. And then we'll take input from that beta version and create a more final version. And then over time, we'll need to figure out who this belongs to and how to continue maintaining it. But yeah, it's interesting. It's exciting. We're hoping that we're just pumping more resources and science into this effort, and hopefully we'll see a lot of benefit. So that's kind of the biggest thing that I'm working on right now.
Super exciting. I think we're all going to want to stay updated on as to how that goes and how we can provide our own stakeholder input. So thanks. Lynn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Lynn?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Up in the Upper Mark West watershed, the debris cleanup has started for folks that were who lost structures in the glass fire. So that is going on as we speak. Thank you again to Sonoma Ecology Center for their support on erosion control. I think the rains have been pretty light, and those wattles and erosion control efforts are holding as far as I know. As Devin mentioned, the post-Tubbs fire properties like my own, we're working on burn piles and burn piles and burn piles. So after you get trained by Pepperwood, if you want to come over and enjoy the heat over here, you're welcome to come and join us on burn piles. And trees continue to fall, and every time we have a wind, we have more downed trees. So it's kind of a never-ending project. The Fire Safe Council, the Upper Mark West Fire Safe Council, just submitted a grant for some fuel reduction in an area that has not been touched by Tubbs or glass fires. So we're excited about that. And as was mentioned, we're also looking at just starting the process of doing an addendum to our CWPP that reflects the changes that we've had up here, the new conditions since those fires. and new priorities as a result of that. So that's kind of what we're up to up here.
Great, thank you. Next is Thea Maria.
Hi, everyone. This is also my first meeting. I'm a member of Mononsville in the Upper Marquess watershed, and I know Penny Sirota has been participating in this group for a long time, and she has recently departed the partnership, so I'm trying to fill her shoes in relation to Mononsville's relation to this group. I've been at Mononsville for 6 years and mostly been involved in more of the agricultural work, but just getting into the forestry work. And I know a number of you have been to our land since it was burned in the glass fire. So we've got lots of projects going on right now, doing also lots of pile burning because we had tons of manzanita that got killed, but is still standing. So cutting that and burning that. And we're getting ready to do a salvage logging operation on a lot of the fir, and yeah, figuring out questions around how much vegetation to remove before we rebuild so that our new homes are fire safe. So pretty much everything everyone's talked about is relevant to the questions we're considering with our land right now. So really looking forward to learning from this group. And we have work days every Saturday if you want to come help up with that stuff too.
Great, workdays every Saturday. Yes, get them out there. Dee Swanheiser.
Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see quite a few new names joining the meeting this morning. So I really welcome you all and look forward to hearing your sharing stories and to having you stay engaged. I wanted to give you a little update about taking action for living systems. We've been doing some presentations for the business community. We did one for Sonoma County Alliance, and we're going to be doing one for the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber. We need all of the sectors of our community engaged in the work that we're doing. And it's been a very good outreach effort because the various parts of the Sonoma County Alliance and the Metro are ag-related, environmentalists. You know, it's a group of varied interests. So we're happy to have more involvement there. We are also involved now with preparing for a February 26th meeting of the Diamond Mountain Mark West NEC cohorts. This is the upper Mark West Creek and over into the Napa side. We're working with several fire safe councils and Pepperwood and other landowners, whoever really wants to be involved, to see what we can do about helping find long-term solutions for the various tragedies that have happened, the various fires, and what we can collectively do together to solve some of these problems. And one of the major ones right now is what are the best treatments to use and where? And I know that many of us are looking at this issue and this problem, and Pepperwood's looking at doing research on this. But I think there's not yet enough conversation amongst our groups, and especially those that are involved in the fire areas, about what are they doing, how do they decide what the best treatments are, what information do they need still to have to make the decisions, because some people, like I'll give an example, the business community and the wine industry, they really don't know, what are the best practices, what should they be doing, where can they get the information. And I'm going to recommend that we have a meeting in the next few months, that we invite some of these businesses, some of these wine growers to a meeting and have a discussion about what they're doing from the perspective of their forest management, but also how it relates to climate change. So I think that's where I'll stop now. I did have a question for Carleone, and that is, I was unable to go to the CWPP meeting the other evening. Has that been recorded, and can I, view that recording at some point? Thank you.
Yes, it's been recorded, and I was going to post that link in the chat when I do my update, but I'll go ahead and post it momentarily.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Dee. Fred?
Hey there. I've been kind of sticking to my business lately. We're cutting about 5 or 6 million feet of timber in Mill Creek right now. We've got about 1 million feet on the ground or more. And it's logging trucks all day and road building a lot. We've got yarders and ground operations. It's a very modern operation, and it's the middle of a big thing. I would love it if this group wants to come up and take a look at what a real logging operation looks like. It looks like the middle of Humboldt County right now. And we're leaving, it's basically a messy clear cut that we're leaving behind. And I'm working with Mill Creek community to plant trees. That said, Roger Sternberg would like you to remind you there's a group called One Tree Planted that will give you 75 cents for every tree you're putting in the ground. And we are also working, I'm also working with Equip, doing a big project and trying to spread myself around other landowners. Just love that everybody is getting behind this and trying to figure out what the next forest is going to be and what sort of trees can we experiment with in next year's planting. For instance, Sequoia gigantea. Shall we start thinking about that? Shall we start looking at other trees we want to move into the mix here? And even brush species as we plant the next forest relative in response to climate change. And it's great to see everybody, and man, been a tough year. My heart goes out to a lot of you who've been through this. Okay.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, it has been a tough year. It'll be really interesting to hear how you envision the next stage of the forest. So keep us updated.
And I should tell you, I'm planning on teaching at SRJC this coming September or August. We'll see if we're having classes in person. It'll be NRM 70. I encourage everybody to sign up.
Nice plug. Good. Ellie Inslee?
I just want really good students. The more we fill it up with professionals before we start, the less 17-year-olds I have in there trying to figure out what's going on in their lives. So I want people who can actually, like, if I say do an average, they know what I'm talking about. Anyway, we'll talk.
I'll take your class, Fred. This is Ellie. I'll take your class for sure. So I wanted to mention, and I think I mentioned this last month, but the Ecology Center got a very small seed grant from FireSafe Sonoma to do something that sounds like what you're talking about, Dee, and that is develop best management principles and practices for fuels reduction in various different habitats. And so it's actually a huge job, and I would love all the help I could get from anybody, and I agree with you, Dee, it would be great to actually maybe just have a specific meeting where we all get together on Zoom and talk about it. What I've been doing is going around and checking in with people that I know are doing this kind of work. And I went out to OAEC and spent some time with Brock Dahlman and got all kinds of fired up about ways to do fuels management and still keep the slender salamander happy. So that was lots of fun. But met with Circuit Rider and a few other groups. And it seems like there's a lot of enthusiasm for this. Because currently there's very little time and money, at least in our corner at the Ecology Center, but we're going to plug away at it. And don't be surprised if you hear from me, because I'm figuring, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name, Devin? Yeah, and Fred, certainly. I'm just really excited about this project, but I think it's a lot bigger than I imagined when we first asked for seed money. The first step that we plan to do is create an outline, just a general, like, how are we going to approach this? And then actually write some grants for that, even to foundations, and, or, you know, put out a GoFundMe. So, you know, there's just a lot of options for moving forward with this. The other thing I want to mention, and you know, send me a note in the chat or whatever if you'd like to help out, and or just, you know, give us a little bit of a boost. Caitlin and I are also on, Caitlin Cornwall, on the steering committee for the CWPP update. And we're going to have our first meeting next week with those folks. And then Caitlin, who's not on the call, is also on the CLEE advisory committee. And I think that's her part of the group is going to start next week. So we can give you an update. That's for the PG&E funds for the county. So that's all for me.
Great. And yeah, through our updates, I'm hearing a lot of interest in, yeah, maybe having another meeting where we talk specifically about ecologically appropriate fuels management techniques and practices. And I think that would be a great thing for us to just have a focused conversation about. I know I have a lot of questions too, and I know we're not, you know, there's like so much information that we need to research and build, but we also have to start, like, we're all doing work right now. So how do we do the best work we can right now without knowing everything that we could? I think it'd be great to talk about that a little bit more.
Well said, Adriana, very well said.
I'll just quickly throw in some of the research that we're doing at Pepperwood. We worked with Fred to come up with an outline to thin 120 acres. And we have planned thinning for the next 3 years, but we have, I believe, 12 research plots in these areas looking at vegetation type, fuel. We have herp cover boards, wildlife cameras, all in these points and areas that we're thinning, and we're getting pre-thinning data for at least a year, and then post-thinning data that we're hoping to continue for at least 3 years. So we're hopefully collecting a lot of, as much information as we could afford to get on some of these thinning projects pre-thinning. So hopefully looking at some of these questions, and we'll be rolling out some information in the years to come. But I know this is an immediate thing that needs to be talked about now, but looking to the future, we're working on some longer term research.
Great. It sounds like we will have all the answers in about 3 years from everyone. So
I just want to throw something out there too while we're on this really important subject, which, you know, when you look at defensible space, there's a lot of prioritization going to roadsides and defensible space around homes. Those are invasive plant corridors. It makes a ton of sense to come at this from like a vegetation management perspective and start looking at it through an ecological lens rather than just hacking away at biomass. And then we've got the ridge lines to consider too. So there's a lot going on there. So I think it's a great idea to have a focused meeting on the subject. So thanks for throwing that out there.
Totally. Great. Okay, well, I can't wait for that meeting to happen. All right, our next person is Kim.
All right, good morning, folks. I just had a few things I wanted to report out. We are working on some hazard tree removals with various neighbors along the Erlin Road on Saddle Mountain, as well as Plum Ranch Road. And so trying to stabilize some of the areas prone to slides on Plum Ranch Road. And then some pretty large Doug firs that are threatening homes on the Erlin Road. So that's been an interesting process. We're also staying heavily involved with the shaded fuel breaks on Calabasas Creek prior to transferring that property over to regional parks. That's going to be fast tracked to transfer Calabasas Creek over to regional parks, as well as a property called Wright Hill Ranch is out on the coast. So that's taking a fair amount of effort to bring regional parks up to speed on that, and then prepare a conservation easement that we will retain on those properties. I wanted to mention this training opportunity. Maybe you've already heard about this. I'll send it via chat. It's called Listening to the Land Together. And the idea is to try to integrate the tribal leaders in resource management with scientists and land managers to open up a dialogue to share more information and hopefully break down some of the barriers that exist about between what one group versus the other might think is the most appropriate way to and fires and resources like that. So I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. It's happening next Saturday, starting at 10, and it's on this thing called Zoom, which is super convenient. You can actually just go to a meeting without leaving your home. It's fascinating. So consider checking in on that. I did give you a link to the I think it's called Eventbrite or something like that. I can't remember the website. But so I just put that in the chat box. The other thing I want to remind you all is like Adriana sent out an announcement about a survey that the California Air Resource Board and the Department of Conservation sent out to get a better handle on how forests are being managed and what are some of the fire preparedness going on in various counties. And so we're talking about a budget line item of about $1 billion that Gavin Newsom has put aside for forest management and wildfire preparedness. And I think it would be really good for us to be able to have people fill out the survey and be able to show how much is going on here and hopefully divert that $1 billion to Sonoma County. I know that's a little bit much to expect, but I think it does bode well for us to be engaged in these types of conversations and have members of the working group trying to demonstrate the types of works that are going on right now. So those are the things I wanted to share with you all today.
That's a great call to action, and I will double check that survey did go out through our group's listserv. Make sure you all get it.
Yeah, it went out on January 21st, so you can look on your inbox from all those emails you get from Adriana. And then also the deadline is March 19th. So we have about a month to get your input on that. The district will be submitting a summary of the type of activity we're doing.
Okay, great. All right. Stephen Swain.
Okay, then let's see. I've got a few things going on. Mostly I've been working on outreach to Spanish landscapers. So that should be coming up. We've started advertising for it and it's on the Spanish radio stations right now. And if you're wondering what that has to do with Forest Working Group, maybe not a lot, I don't know. But we're going to try and teach, it's an introductory course. We're going to be trying to bring in some of the ideas of just raw defensible space so that folks, and this is really aimed, this is not the high-end landscape group. It's aimed at some of the guys who are flying below the radar, the mow and blow crowd with the big, you see them with the pickup trucks and the lawnmower in the back and the pruners and that kind of stuff. And we're going to try and it's going to be held bilingually. So that's one place that we've been doing stuff. I'm working with some folks in Marin right now, primarily to get a professional level landscape series education on what defensible space looks like, at least in terms of just design. What kind of clearances are we talking about? What is the 5-foot zone? What's the 30-foot zone? What's the 100-foot zone? That kind of stuff. It's going to still leave a lot of things. And yeah, we are going to be talking about what happens when you clear all this, and what are the weeds that are going to try and move back in, and how does this create challenges for you, and how do you do this in a way that's reasonable? There have been a lot of questions recently about mulch and the flammability of such, and some really it appears that there's some misunderstandings. The problem is that, you know, with emails and things like that, you don't really know, but it looks like there's a lot of need for information on mulches and what the difference is between arbor chips and composted mulch and all the other different things you can get out there, and the vilification of gorilla hair and all that stuff. It's another topic for another time. And then finally, Ellie Inslee and I and Marshall Turbo will be getting together on Monday to go look at her junipers and plan on setting them on fire and videotaping the whole thing. So that's going to be fun too. And that's all I got.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So you've got a couple of different education efforts going on out there and some research too. Thanks, Steve. Robert?
Good morning, everyone. Robert Aguero, professional forester with Permit Sonoma. I'll just share two long-term planning updates that we're working on at the planning department. Our local coastal plan, I believe, is having some public workshops coming up at the end of February and beginning of March. I will put the link to that in the chat. And then also we are updating our comprehensive tree ordinance, essentially modernizing it. And I believe that the first phase of that, there's going to be a board of supervisors workshop in May. So keep an eye out for that. I'll keep this group updated as that moves forward. So that's it from me.
Great. I just heard about the tree ordinance too, and I think it would be awesome if you wanted to share some more information with us via listserv or at our next meeting. It'd be really, really great to keep in touch. Okay, Peter.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Lacourt. I am the forest manager for Pacific Union College here in Angwin, California. I'm actually in Napa County, so I'm kind of piggybacking on here with you guys, but I'm really excited about all the good work going on in Sonoma. So I'm just really eager to kind of meet all of you guys and connect with you, learn from this group. And I'll actually be making a very thorough presentation of some of my past and current projects here coming up around 11:15. So I look forward to sharing more with you at that time.
Sweet. Thanks, Peter. Ron Roleri. And Ron, you're on mute.
Hi, you got me?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah. We have a bank of beautiful brains here, and I'm listening. The RCD is going to meet next week, next Thursday. So Sonoma RCD, I'm a director. And it's interesting, Jill, I've got to get in touch with you because I'm going back to Gualala. And so just keep that in mind. And I've got a few burn piles waiting for me up in Siskiyou County that I think they've done a pretty good job up there so far, but it's a different situation. And we're like in an interface, and the complexity, where you go from coastal to transitional to savanna to forest. We have a very complex environment to manage here, and glad we got all these brains together. I'm taking notes. Nice to see all of you.
Great. Thanks, Ron. Erica, Warren.
Good morning, everyone. This is my first forest working group meeting, and I'm really pleased to be here. Thumbs up if you can hear me, because I just got a notice. Great, thanks. I just had a really great conversation and found out about the climate action plan working group that happened recently. So if you were a part of that, I just want to put a ping out there and say, I'd love to hear how that was and what kind of takeaways you had for your group or your work. Because Sonoma Ecology Center, I'm a recent hire as of December, really fortunate to get a COVID job in this era. I've been managing the Sonoma Ecology Center response to toxin containment and worked a lot in the Mark West watershed and worked also on Adobe Canyon Road and throughout our service area, and just want to just say that we're closing up our end of that and express some gratitude to Pepperwood and a number of other volunteers that are here today and local residents that participated in that effort. And a huge shout out to Friends of Mark West Watershed for their organization among many other organizations out there, including Alpine Club and maybe more than are coming to mind right this minute. I used to be a PG&E subcontractor as a biological monitor. So if anybody wants any insight into that world, happy to talk about how things get released and that that process that's a little bit clouded. And happy to also share connections that I have in the PG&E world, such as they are as a subcontractor. And then I'm super new to Sonoma County as well. I've been here for about a year and I'm still making inroads. So if anyone would love a networking call, I would love 15 minutes of your time just to get situated here. And if anyone wants to change their name on this sheet, I'd love to find out where you are so that when I reach out to you, I have a little bit more information. And you can do that in the participant setting. That would be super wonderful. I think that's all for me right this minute, except that I'm currently coordinating an event for the Women's Environmental Network, where I'm also on the board. And it's all about collaborative processes. It does have a ticketed fee, but I'll put the Eventbrite into the chat. It's an interesting thing where we're really excited about collaborations that we do here and with other organizations such as Circuit Rider and Occidental Arts and Ecology. And those are just ways that we are really grounded in how we partner and how we do business here in the county. So thank you for being our partners, and I look forward to being in your network in the future.
Great, well, welcome. Awesome. Carrie Leon.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to give a real quick update on the CWPP, the Sonoma County Community Wildfire Protection Plan update. We had our public kickoff meeting on Tuesday evening, which went well, about 100 people in attendance, which was great. I have posted already, and I will post again, a bunch of links. One of the links that I posted was for the video of that meeting. So if you weren't able to come and you want to see what we talked about, you can go and spend an hour and a half watching the meeting on the video. Basically, we just sort of introduced the concept of the CWPP and what it is and what we hope it will do, which is especially to bring cohesive voices to the discussions about so many of the things that we heard people talking about today. What are the priorities? What are the best way to handle environmental considerations when we're talking about fuels reduction? What are the hazards and risks? And that is one of the most critical aspects of this plan, is that our contracting team, which includes rockstar GIS folks, Esther Mandino from Digital Mapping Solutions and Mark Tuckman and Carol Rice, are really working on developing really good hazard indexing so that we can really look at when you combine a variety of hazard factors like flame length, suppression difficulty, probability of ignition, we can really start to see the areas that are at highest risk and where our best bang for the buck is for doing both landscape fuel treatment projects and intensive education, outreach, and incentives for defensible space and home hardening. So I'm super excited about where this is going. Really encourage everybody's participation in the plan as we move along. Our steering committee meeting, our next steering committee meeting is on March 1st. That is open for the public with limited ability to comment and speak. It's a steering committee meeting, so our time is limited. But I will put the link for the website into the chat, and you can register there. We'll be following up with a bunch of public meetings that'll be held by supervisory districts, likely starting in March, could be a little later. So we'll be doing meetings in each of the 5 supervisory districts to bring everybody together to start looking at what's going on in each of those areas. That is a change from the 2016 plan, which was organized not by supervisory districts, but by the CAL FIRE battalions. We decided to change the geographic areas focused in the plan simply because the CAL FIRE battalions are, some of them are a little odd, like Battalion 1410 goes from Bodega Bay to St. Helena. So it covers a swath that is difficult to make consistent judgments about what's going on with the vegetation communities. When you're going from Bodega Bay to Mount St. Helena, that's about as different as you can get. So that is the update on that. The other thing that we're working on at the county is the update of the multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan. The first public meeting for that is coming up on the 25th, and I will also put the link for the multi-jurisdiction plan website, and the registration link for that meeting is on that webpage. So you can either follow the direct link or go to the webpage. But these are important plans that also will be included in the general plan. Both the CWPP and in multiple jurisdictions. CWPP will be annexed as the wildfire chapter of the multiple jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan. All kinds of other stuff going on, but I don't want to take too much of everybody's time. So unless there's any questions, and I do have to leave in 3 minutes. So my apologies that I can't hang around, but if you have questions, ask them fast. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. All right, well, please send your questions on to Caroline. I saw that she put her contact in the chat a little higher up. Next is Ray Kraus.
Hi. Did I get unmuted? Okay. I'll be real quick. I'm just transitioning from pre-fire forest management to post-fire forest management. We've got a lot of dead fir trees. Anybody wants to come help, you're welcome. That's it.
Nice. Thanks, Ray. Jason Wells.
Hey there. Jason Wells, Sonoma and Goldridge RCDs. I guess the thing I'll throw out there is I have a preemptive order for 20,000 Douglas fir seedlings. They're cited for the glass fire area. I can get those to landowners with pretty much no cost, other than maybe I might ask for some money for transportation. I still haven't figured out how to pay for that. But that's a sweet deal. Plus we got North Bay Forest Improvement Program is up and running and accepting applications. Generally, this should be for forest landowners who at least have a forest management plan. It's really how it's developed for. And so then we can help you do your beneficial forest improvements like thinning, planting, pruning. So between that and the fact that I got a bunch of free trees, we should be able to do reforestation stuff and give you a considerable amount covered for small landowners. I figure 20,000 trees is about enough for 150 to 200 acres of planting. And so they will be grown in time for next winter when they get planted in the ground. So that's all I got.
Great. If you have, flyers or anything, let me know and I'll send them through the listserv, Jason. Otherwise, people will just get in touch with you.
Adriana, can we
tree
put that
species
on
is just Douglas fir.
Can we put that on our website? Maybe it sounds like such a deal. We should put it on our website. Anyway, my suggestion.
Yeah, we can do that. I can also put it into our newsletter. which will go out soon. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thanks, Jason.
normally I'm not a big tree planter around Sonoma County because everything sprouts, but if you've been out St. Helena Road, there's a good reason to be planting some Douglas fir. So before people hate me for planting Douglas fir in Sonoma County.
Gotcha.
Dumb question. Why are we planting Doug fir? Because it's well adapted to the site. It's what was growing there before. It ecologically makes sense. And yeah, I could have a whole meeting with you if you want to justify. But yeah, and also they're free and they're set to go. So hopefully it won't become brush, and we can keep these areas as forests.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks. People have moved around a little bit, but I think that Jacob McDaniel's next.
Hi, everyone. Let's see. Yeah, I've just been working with Kaylin and Roberta at Fire Safe Sonoma to get all the local fire safe councils and COPE groups together to start talking about their priorities and how we can support each other. So I'm happy to be a part of that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
All right, thanks, Jacob. Yeah, that was a great kickoff meeting you guys had a week ago or so, bringing all those local fire safe councils together to finally like talk and learn from each other. So that's awesome. And Brooke Edwards.
Hey guys, good to see everyone. I'm the Sonoma Coast Regional Director for the Wildlands Conservancy, and I spend most of my time managing the Jenner Headlands Preserve out on the Sonoma Coast. We have a couple of things moving forward. We are working with Forest Unlimited to plant redwood trees in areas where we're suffering a lot of loss of tan oak in our forests. So we're losing entire stands of tan oak. So where it's kind of conducive to replant the redwoods, north facing, moist slopes, we're working with Forest Unlimited to go back in there. And right now we're looking at planting about 2,000 redwoods. And that's been postponed a couple of times due to COVID restrictions, but hopefully we'll get those trees in the ground soon while everything is wet out there. We're also looking to move forward with our Restoration Forestry THP, Timber Harvest Plan, up on our West Ridge. And so that's where we're going back into these lands that were commercially harvested for really decades, if not a century, and thinning out the smaller trees and leaving the biggest and best trees to then mature into a mature forest ecosystem. So hopefully, you know, this September, October, we'll actually be in there thinning out the trees, and Fred is our forester on that one. So we're looking forward to that. Also wanted to mention, I don't see Judy Rosales on the meeting, but she and the Coast Ridge Community Forest is putting together a community meeting looking at the Walbridge and Myers fires. That is Saturday, March 13th at 10 in the morning. And I'll go ahead and post a link to that registration, but a few of the folks that will be talking at that meeting will be Battalion Chief Marshall Turbeville, and then also Division Chief Ben Nichols, and looking at the Walbridge and Myers fire specifically. And then also I just wanted to say that I have been out to Fred's property a couple of times since the Walbridge fire, and it has been very enlightening just looking at the landscape, seeing how it's responded, and then also going through that thought process of what to, you know, how to manage this landscape. And so I think if we can put together a workshop or just a field trip of us out there, and I think it would be beneficial for all of us to go through that process, and it would really further the goals of, you know, this group in general. So that's it for me.
Great. thanks so much for sharing that, and please do add that link for the Coast Ridge event. I think we'd all be interested in sitting in, and I also like that idea of doing some kind of a field trip, a COVID safe field trip to Fred's property at some point. Awesome, thanks. Let's see who is next. Marshall, you are next. I'm not sure if that's Marshall.
I wasn't planning. Can you hear me? I wasn't planning to speak, so I have nothing to announce. But you know, since I'm here, if there's any questions, I can answer them. I think I know most of you folks, or I've seen you guys around. Just enjoying the winter time, not having to go to fires and spend multiple days away.
You're here. Great to have you, Marshall. I think that's everyone, unless I missed someone. Feel free to pipe up. Okay.
Shanti.
Oh, and Shanti, I think Shanti is just listening in today.
Okay.
But thank you for that. Okay, great. Well, we have, a number of things on our agenda that I'm going to just kind of run through. I don't want to take a lot of time on them. It was more important to me to hear your updates today than to do some of our regular business. I definitely want to make time for Peter's presentation at the end of the meeting. So give me a second to pull up our agenda and we'll just run through a few things. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like Dee and I are going to be giving a steering committee report, and we'll be pretty brief about that. What I have to report for you all is that the steering committee kind of went back and looked again at our 2-year work plan and made some final changes. We have a couple of things we wanted to talk to you about, and we'll get to that in that item. But we're hoping that the group will approve our 2-year work plan today. Great. Another item is fundraising. So we have been looking at our fundraising prospects and thinking about our needs. To be totally transparent, we're looking for like somewhere around 20,000 for a year of coordination, and we're looking everywhere we can to find funding support. The funder that's funded us for the last 2 years will be looking at our request come the summer, but we have a couple, we've got some months to fill between now and then. So there's a couple of different funding sources that I'll be applying to, such as the Vintners Foundation. Rebuild North Bay has like a potentially good fit program for us. So if anyone has any ideas about how to keep the coordination services running for the Forest Working Group, please let me know. I think we also will want to have a conversation at some point about like doing more like donations and fundraising, and like I think I mentioned this last meeting that if members have a way to kind of like build in some funding into their own grants, that would be something I'd like to explore with you. But otherwise, we'll just be going towards those kind of general foundation style grant opportunities. Yeah, there's that. And before I break to the next thing, does anyone have any comments or ideas about that? Or Dee, did I miss anything?
No, you're fine, Derek.
Okay. Okay. The next one was just we kind of touched on some hot topics that came up, like the woody biomass business competition is one that's been getting some, I think the environmental community has been having some conversations internally about the business competition. And there's also some question about the Forest Working Group's involvement in that competition. And just to step back and explain, the woody biomass competition, business competition, is a project of the Sonoma County or Northern Sonoma County Air Resources Board or something, Air Resources District. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but it's sort of their brainchild that they had with the Sonoma County Economic Development Board when they realized that these wildfires are having major impacts on our air quality in our area. And one of the most important ways to reduce our wildfire risk is taking head on all the woody biomass that's in our forests. And so they came up with a small grant opportunity for a new innovative business to help manage all of the excess biomass in the county. And they just launched this competition, and the potential winning business could be anything from a biomass facility to like high quality wood products, furniture, to maybe biochar creation, or even like landscaping, mulch or something. It could be anything. And I think so early on, the organizers of this competition reached out to the community to say, like, who would like to help kind of advise us along the way. And as a coordinator, I said that I'd be happy to like stay in touch and help them think about outreach and connect them to some of the foresters that are on our forest working group. So Jason Wells, I'm forgetting Mike's last name was Mike Jones, and Jeff Kelly all kind of agreed to be contacts for them. And I think they were involved a little bit, but weren't pulled in too much. But that's just generally like what kind of involvement the forest working groups had with that group. And when we heard that there was some concern from the environmental community about the potential environmental impacts of the winning competition, we wanted to respond, and I want to respond now and say that a lot of those concerns were focused on the potential for the winning business to be a like kind of large industrial biomass facility. And I think that the competition organizers are, very aware of the concerns that different, groups have about biomass facilities, and are prepared to, really consider any applicant that comes in and make sure that the applicant has, that they're not going to have a negative impact on our community. It's really a small grant meant for a small business, local business, and it's not going to be the kind of facility that I think everyone has the most concern about. I don't know, Jason or anyone else, do you want to like help me fill this out a little bit? Jason Wells and I have talked about this a bit, so I didn't know if you wanted to add to the conversation.
I mean, I think it could be a full workshop to talk about, all the different options for doing forest management. But in terms of this program, it's not specifically meant to be at all about like biomass energy generation, although that is not off the table and should not be off the table. It's just about trying to find alternative markets for what currently will just get thrown in a burn pile and burned in an open pit. So, the example that they used, which I thought was funny, was like making baseball bats out of tan oak. And I was like, that sounds like an awful idea, but that was an idea. So it could be anything ranging as simple as that to, whatever people are able to come up with. And they involved us pretty early. By us, I mean me and Michael Jones. I know we were invited to their steering committee. And frankly, it was all mostly business discussions anyway. So we kind of were just there, but not helpful. So I didn't pay too much attention to it. I'm excited about it. I mean, I hope that somebody finds a use for additional material so we don't just end up burning it. And if it can go to some other beneficial purpose, I'm all ears. And that could be, biochar sort of site specific thing, but remembering it's only like $30,000. So it's not going to be a crazy venture.
Yeah.
Can I say
Oh, and one
something?
other, go ahead.
I was involved on two biomass proposals, one for Fort Bragg and one for the detention center, I guess, small, but that's out on the coast. And I went to Missoula, Montana, where they're pretty successful. The university there has a biomass plant, but they have a lumber mill right next door. They're different climate, different everything, but getting the air quality permits and all made it so difficult. Even biochar is real testy. And when it comes to penciling out a good feasibility study, you have to bring equipment to the place where you're doing it, which is, it's got its own problems with roads, etc. Or you got to haul all this stuff to a centralized plant, which is, you're going to burn more diesel hauling it than it's worth. Some areas it works really good. One thing I did notice when I was in Montana, we went on a field trip to look at what everybody was doing, and with all the secondary chips and stuff, pellet mills were working because they were selling pellets. They were shipping them to the European Union, shiploads of pellets. They were shipping them to Japan. It's a mechanical where you just, it's one step beyond shredding. But that was one product that seemed like it worked with people. But again, you've got to transport the product, and it's so difficult here in the Bay Area with our air control problems and our erosion problems with transportation that Tom Roth said, let's just chip them and spread them. I just don't know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Fred could probably tell us what to do with all that.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dee.
I think the benefit of this conversation, unfortunately, I think that the BioBiz group might have been, I wish they had been a little more clear about what it was that they were looking for in terms of this contest. But the conversation and the concern about biomass, that conversation, I think has been very helpful to bring it to everyone's attention. But biomass is not a proven, it's really so far not proven itself to be an environmentally sound approach to dealing with our forest materials. I have been looking for a couple of weeks now since the concern was brought up. I think more conversation needs to happen. And I think Terry said it well on the chat that they should have engaged the environmental community, whatever that environmental community term means. That's also a term that we aren't really clear on. But what I do know, it was well-intentioned, and so are the concerns. And there needs to be more conversation about it. And I understood that Sonoma Clean Power, as a result, was going to perhaps put a workshop together of some sort. And I really hope that they do that, because this needs to be paid close attention to, not only just in Sonoma County, but wherever that, whatever is called biomass comes up. It is so far does not reduce greenhouse gases, and it doesn't necessarily increase carbon sequestration of our forests. So we really need to pay attention to this. So I'm really, the consequence of a important misunderstanding now needs to be taken advantage of. That's what I think.
Thank you, Dee. And I hate to have to move us along, but I think that's right, that the organizers are going to hold a meeting for us to talk more about this. And I think Sonoma Clean Power is going to host it. So when I know more, I'll definitely forward it along. But in the interest of time, I'm gonna have to leave it there. And the next item in the agenda is the work plan. And the item after that is just like outreach stuff. And I know you all are aware of the workshop that we're gonna be having with Jack Cohen coming up. That's kind of the only big thing on my radar. Anyone else who has events that they haven't already mentioned during the round robin, please email those on or put them in the chat and I'll capture them. But I would love to just take our focus over to the 2-year work plan so that we can get that wrapped up, and then we will start Peter's presentation. So I'm going to open up our 2-year work plan and share it with you all. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, so this is the 2-year work plan draft, and you all, I think, looked at this last meeting, and I took in your feedback and made some changes with the steering committee. I won't, go over every line, of course. I'm just gonna draw your attention to a couple of important ones. One thing is we didn't have a section on our network of support. Like the work plan talked about our outreach and our services, but didn't really talk about the networking that we do, which is such a big and major part of who we are as a group. So I added this section. Go ahead and give it a quick read over, and I'll just review what we do. Again, we have monthly meetings, give participants time to discuss their projects and such. We have a listserv that facilitates, partners getting in touch with each other outside of meetings. And we maintain our focus, which is, about that's locally focused on forests. And we want to have productive discourse and be respectful in our conversations. So, and also we kind of put this rules of conduct is something that I haven't really built out yet, but I thought it might be useful, something to lean on when we need it in our charter. So are there any comments about this section? Any changes that you think need to be made?
I think that's a great, yeah, sorry. So I think that's a great addition. Thanks for adding that language. I think that's very valuable to what we do. It kind of gets back to these invitations to participate or endorse activities like the biobusiness proposal. I think that's totally legit. I think what we should try to do in the future is try to lean on this work plan saying, okay, let's see if this, whatever proposal comes to us and says, is this compatible with our work plan? Because that's kind of a trick that we depend on with the VLI and our other our acquisition plans and things in the past, is that we really wanted to be super focused on the type of work that the Ag and Open Space District does, and not, kind of go with the winds of the moment and be thrown off course to appease a certain group. So I'm not dissing what we've done with the bio business or anything like that. I'm just saying this is why we have a 2-year work plan, is to try to be laser focused and depend on that when opportunities come up and say, all right, is it compatible with our work plan first? And then decide whether it's something we want to adjust our priorities on.
Right, thanks, Kim. Yeah, and I think some sections of this plan are broad enough in our stated goals that we can, we can make room for something that's new and novel that comes up, and we're like, oh, this really does fit with our goals and our services section, even though it wasn't explicitly stated. Or no, this is kind of off the beaten track.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
And it may be somewhere else in the work plan. It really seems like this is an extremely white group, and it would be good somewhere to put in biodiversity of people, ethnic, creed, LGBTQ. I mean, it's just in this day and age, that's appropriate. It would be really great to welcome in Native American people who are doing environmental work. I know in each different community there are Native Americans doing this work.
Yes, thank you, Jean. I'm going to just put some really draft language in here
Yeah, maybe they could even give a talk at the end of one of our meetings on what's going on, on their tribal lands.
Yeah, and I think, I hate that basically, what I'm writing is just kind of boilerplate, but I think we do have a genuine interest in bringing in more voices into our group and just, helping those who would be part of the conversation, but for whatever reason are not now, getting them in so that they can be here and take advantage of this group like we all do. So thanks for reminding me about that.
Just
Anyone
for the
else?
record, we're crushing it on gender diversity. Kudos to us for that.
That's true.
I have one more suggestion for networking support, maybe number 4 or 5, which is to incorporate some workforce development goals as well into our charter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you, Erica. That's a great suggestion. Anyone else? Okay, well, please send your thoughts along via email or chat if you have them, and I'll just keep us going along. Okay, so this was a big one. We talked a bit about this watershed assessment in our last meeting, and I think we were all fired up about how great it would be to have an assessment of all of Sonoma County's watersheds and what's happening there, what kind of forestry activities are happening there, what's the status of was it burned, was it not burned, how many acres are planned or not planned for. And while that's a really great resource, I think that in the time between now and then, we've gotten a bit real with ourselves and realized that's sort of beyond the capacity of this group to pull together. So instead, we rephrased the section to say we have numerous watersheds, many of which are forested. There's a good reason to strategize forest needs at the watershed level. But wait a minute, this might be the original. I think this is the original language. But I think what we want to do is just, instead of creating a database, we want to invite our partners to let us know about conditions as they come up in the watersheds, and just kind of keep the conversations, going about what are the different watershed needs. And, as individual members have questions about their watershed or something like that, we can help connect them to resources that we know exist. But I think creating and managing a database is just kind of beyond us. But I know from our last conversation that a lot of this information already exists in our own separate wheelhouses. So I'll edit this I'll just edit this so that it reflects what the changes we need to make. And I'm sorry, I thought this was the updated version. Any other things that I wanted to bring your attention to? Mark, thanks for your comments. I haven't reviewed them yet, but glad you had a chance to look at this. Okay, I'm just looking at a few of these. I think another one that Dee and I had come to our attention was the services. Oh yeah, so this was the comment about the prospects of getting the counties with a programmatic timberland environmental impact report. I think we see a lot of value in this happening, but again, the working group is not the body to make that happen. Rather, we want to support any partners in their efforts to get PTEIR running. I think that's a little more appropriate for us. Thanks, Robert, for kind of clarifying there in the comment. And then another one that recently was changed, Dee and I worked on this one. So this is about just like, you know, giving us a task for engaging with the living systems group. We said that we would maybe, you know, consider hosting a conference together or a workshop on fuels treatments, or just having like a public meeting about the living systems work, in which we would like have forest working group members interface with the people who are in the natural enterprise complexes, just to get us talking together. Since Dee has been reporting every month about the work that they're doing, I think it would be great for us to you know, at some point actually meet the Taking Action for Living Systems group and have a chance to talk directly to them and some of the you know, participants in their programs, and just, you know, see how all that's going in a special meeting outside of our regular meetings at some point. So that's kind of like a task we can give ourselves for the next 2 years. And I think those are the major changes since you last saw this document. So now I just kind of want to get a general, I'm going to stop sharing and then just get a general like thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, please give me a thumbs up if you feel like this document is in a good spot and you feel comfortable with us making some final edits and improving. Give me a sideways if you're like, oh, I'd like to have more time with this and I want to like look at it a little more, or a thumbs down if it's not ready and we should rethink things. So go ahead. And if you're not sure, you can go like this. Okay, so I'm seeing some thumbs, some sideways, some thumbs, thumb up. Okay, all right. It seems like generally we're in between this and this, which I totally understand because probably a lot of you haven't really seen this or worked on it too much. So what do you all recommend that I do? Does that feel like a good enough like show of support to move forward with it? Or do you feel like we need more time? Mark, you have your hand up.
I've been going over this for the last 2 months, and if people haven't had a chance to review it, that they should review it soon and give you comments, but I think we should move forward.
Okay, anyone else? And Mark, do you just have a question or?
Yeah, I thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I realize as a newbie, it's you know, questionable as to whether I can provide an informed point of view. But regarding my comments, I just had questions about other impacts or threats to forests in general. And I was curious why land conversion was not included. And perhaps this has already been addressed and it's maybe irrelevant at this point in time or is being handled by someone else. But I was wondering why that was not addressed in the work plan.
Threat of conversion?
Well, I mean, other types of conversion, whether it be, you know, just development in general, or even to other agricultural uses. But there's obviously a lot of threats, and maybe this has been evaluated and been quantified. But I just thought that both related to your educational goals as well as your service-related activities, proposed activities, that it could be helpful in informing priorities as well as actions in the future. So I just threw that out there. I realize, you know, I'm throwing a monkey wrench in the works here late in the game, but it's just a question. And I did read all the documents, all of your background documents and strategic plan. And I did read your work plan, and I generally support it. I think that it's well thought out. I realize a lot of it's a carryover from the previous year. So I just want to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, and I saw some comments come through about that. So Fred said forest conversion is more in the Sierra Club bailiwick. I think we're agnostic on this subject. And forest management is more of what we're concerned with. And then Jason has a contrary opinion that says, I agree that conversion is the #1 threat to forests in Sonoma County and California in general. but agrees that, yeah, Sierra Club is in on this. So I think, I don't know, I think there's a place for it in our work plan, or maybe even in our, maybe it's more like our mission or something, is to, I think, yeah, our mission is to preserve forests. And so that would mean, you know, preserving them from conversion. Robert thinks you say conversions are permitted and subject to CEQA through permit Sonoma. So, okay, sometimes it's legal. Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good point though.
If I could voice an opinion, I think, you know, that's obviously the nature of the work with the ag and open space is trying to protect from conversion. One of the things that we've tried to do with the work plan over time is really to be able to try to address the things that we're capable of addressing as a working group. But that doesn't necessarily mean that each of the different organizations involved might not make that a highest priority for them to address conversion. But I think it's a good discussion. I think we should maybe just take a look at whether we can include language that's realistic of what the working group could do to contribute to maybe better education on how conversion is happening in our in the Sonoma County's forests. Or maybe, and one of the things we do, Mark, is we put together subcommittees to address specific issues. And that subcommittee can then kind of harness that energy to focus on that particular topic. And maybe that's another way we could try to deal with this is maybe spend some more time on addressing what are those key issues that we feel we can realistically do to improve our ability to address forest conversion. That's another way we can try to handle it.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. One reason why I'm raising this issue also, again, as a newbie, I don't know how relevant this is. And I do really appreciate Fred's comment about this being an agnostic group, you know, a kind of a big tent approach here. You don't want to offend people, especially landowners. But I also see that there's been an increased emphasis in post-fire and kind of fire management, fuels management. And I don't think that this has been quantified as to what the long-term impacts are on forests as far as not just the fires, but the fuels management. And one could argue that fuels management, especially as people are looking at doing permanent fuel breaks, and what I'm seeing is basically a permanent state of vegetation management, especially in urban forests, that you could argue that this is a land conversion for post-fire fuels management. So I just think that it's going to be increasingly important. And I think that even if we take an agnostic approach of purely scientific, of looking at quantifying what these changes are over time, especially with climate change and the continued regular fires, that this is going to be increasingly important. And I think that it'd be good to wrap our heads around this. So that yeah.
I think we're going to have to leave it there. And I agree, this is a really good conversation for us to have at a future meeting, maybe March, maybe April. I'll carve out some time for us to talk more about it. And
I'd like to say that we would also, before we finalize this work plan, we should look at this issue. It's a big one. So I'd say a further conversation is absolutely crucial.
Okay, well, hopefully we can talk about this in March then, and everyone will have time to look over the work plan between now and then, and we will get a real consensus on the plan at that time. Great. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Peter Lacourt and apologize for taking his time, and also invite you all to stay after 12, since I think Peter would like closer to 30 minutes to present. So if you are able to stay, please do.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. So can we all hear me and see me okay before I begin?
Yeah.
Okay. So I prepared a pretty thorough presentation this morning about the work that I've done here again in Angwin at the Pacific Union College Demonstration and Experimental Forest. You know, I'll try to keep it to a half hour. It'd be good if I could run about 10 minutes over time. I understand if people need to duck out around noon. We've got a lot of content to cover, so I'll try not to move too quickly, but I do want to thoroughly cover all these subjects. And I'm aware that we have kind of a range of people with different expertise in this room. So I tried to strike a balance between going somewhat in depth into the forestry terminology and principles involved in these projects, but I also tried to make this presentation available to understanding for the layman. So with that, let me get my screen share going. Okay, can we all see my first slide? I'm getting a thumbs up here. Okay. Well, again, everyone, I'm Peter Lacourt. I'm doing a presentation this morning on the Pacific Union College Demonstration in Experimental Forest. The story of the PUC forest, which has only been a thing for about 3 years, really starts with two people. One being myself. So who is Peter Lacourt? I was born and raised here in Angwin, California. I went to PUC Elementary School, PUC Preparatory School, and Pacific Union College. I have 2 degrees from PUC, being a bachelor's degree in French and a bachelor's degree in environmental studies. This is a picture of me during my BS in environmental studies at the Conservatory of Flowers in Golden Gate Park. From there, I really figured out that forestry was my passion. So I went on to College of the Redwoods up by Eureka, and I got an AS in forestry. So this is a picture of me with my forest ecology class in the Humboldt Redwoods State Park. And it was in my forestry degree that I took my first class in this little something called GIS. And I've always been into maps and computers. And I remember being in my first GIS course and figuring out, like, you mean I get to make a map on a computer? And I fell in love at that time. So I have a master's degree in GIS from the renowned University of Redlands MSGIS program. Redlands is the location of Esri, the largest GIS company in the world. And so I got to take a really cool applied master's degree in GIS down there. So this is a picture of me presenting my master's thesis at the Esri User Conference in 2016 down at the San Diego Convention Center. So currently I'm the forest manager for Pacific Union College. I started on January 2, 2018. I'm also a council member of the Angwin Fire Safe Council. I'm a board member of the Napa Communities Firewise Foundation, and I was recently appointed a committee member of the California Joint Forestry Committee. So below we see a picture of me communing with my forest, taking some students out on the land, as well as a picture of a visit from the Joint Forestry Committee a little over a year ago to my forest. The next person involved in the story of the PUC forest is a man named John Henshaw, who we see here on the left in the Redwood Flats area of the PUC forest, next to our president, Bob Cushman. John is a retired U.S. Forest Service forester. He's a former board member of the Land Trust of Napa County. He's currently a technical advisor to the Napa County Resource Conservation District, and he is the volunteer forester for the PUC forest. And I like to call him the godfather of the PUC forest because we would not be here without him. So what is Pacific Union College? Pacific Union College is a private Seventh-day Adventist liberal arts college located in Angwin here in Napa County. We were actually founded as Healdsburg Academy way back in 1882. And we moved to Angwin in 1909 with the purchase of the Angwin Resort, which was 1,636 acres of land for the low, low price of $60,000, though I don't know what that is in today's money. So what is the PUC forest? PUC owns about 1,300 acres of forested land, which we can see here east of our primary campus on this left part of the map. I like to say our forest is one of the school's best assets that can support our mission in a number of ways, including academics, student life, and community relations. PUC placed 864 acres of forest in a conservation easement completed in December 2018. We see that area right here labeled CE1. PUC is working on a second conservation easement on an additional 240 acres of forest, and combined together, these two conservation easement areas represent what has been known as the PUC forest. It was on a visit by the California Forest Stewardship Coordinating Committee in 2014 that John Henshaw and some folks were on the land visiting the Las Posadas State Forest here. They got to the fence line right around here, and John asked, well, who owns that land on the other side of the fence? So John reached out to our vice president of finance at the time, John Collins, and started talking to him about conserving our forest. And that was basically the beginning of what we now know as the PUC Forest back in 2014. Some fun facts about the forest. We have very high biodiversity as ranked by the Land Trust of Napa County during a survey of our land as we were doing our first conservation easement. We serve as an important wildlife corridor between private forested lands to the north and the Las Posadas State Forest to the south. We actually have some of the easternmost coast redwood trees in the world here in our forest at 38 miles from the coast. We have the headwaters of Moore Creek here in the forest, which supply the drinking water to the city of Napa through the reservoir known as Lake Hennessy near Rutherford. And we have a forest legacy conservation easement. So what is a conservation easement? It is a voluntary legal agreement between a landowner and land trust or government agency that permanently limits uses of the land in order to protect its conservation values. Landowners retain many of their rights, including their right to own and use the land. And it's really a good deal where essentially you get paid to keep your forest intact as forested land, and you generate a significant amount of the revenue, roughly 2/3, as if 2/3 of the revenue if you just sold your land outright, but you get to keep your land. You just basically sell your development rights to the land. So it's really kind of a true case of having your cake and eating it too, where you get to keep your land, but you also get paid a significant amount of money, again, to prevent future development of that land. Those rights are written into the property deed. So even if the land is sold, the person who buys the land buys it with those restrictions and isn't able to develop into the future. So conservation easements are really neat ways to ensure that forests stay protected and intact as forested lands into the future. What kinds of activities are permitted under my easement? Well, we still allow hiking, biking, horseback riding, research education, and forest improvement. And these are essentially the ways we had been using our forest in the past. So we get to keep using our forest the way we have been, but we also generated a significant amount of revenue to help fund our primary mission here at the school, being education. So the result is we save our forest in perpetuity for conservation, recreation, education, research, and more. So our first conservation easement was 864 acres of land, primarily east of our ridge line, which is, we'll discuss in the future. We've got a very prime ridge line that runs through our forest right around here, which is the eastern edge of the Napa Valley before it descends here to the right into the Pope Valley area. The process began in late 2014. As I mentioned, John Henshaw reached out to PUC after a visit to the Las Posadas State Forest with the Joint Forestry Committee. Our conservation easement value was calculated at $8.1 million for this land. The total value of the land outright would have been $12 million if we had just sold it. So you can see that we had a conservation easement value that was pretty close to the actual sale value of the land. The funders that helped make this happen was the state's Wildlife Conservation Board, AKA the WCB, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund by CAL FIRE, which is now incorporated into their CCI grants, which is the Climate Change Investment Grants. Essentially, they take cap and trade dollars and reinvest those into forests, which I think is an excellent opportunity to generate revenue for forest activities. This is also where the Forest Health Grant and Forest Fire Prevention grants come from this Greenhouse Gas Fund. We had an anonymous private donor who gave us $700,000, and then PUC came down $1 million as a bargain sale. Essentially, the landowner generally is asked to contribute to the conservation value because landowners are benefiting by getting to keep their land in forest. So the process of Conservation Easement 1 was completed in December 2018. We're now working on a second conservation easement. It's 262 acres of land west of our ridge line, which we can see right here. The process began in, oh wait, you guys can't see my mouse. There's my mouse. Okay, sorry. The process began in mid-2019. We have a conservation value on this land of $4.6 million, and we have a higher per acre value of this land because of the higher development potential. As you can see on this part of our forest here in Conservation Easement 1, it's primarily the area east of our ridgeline, which is very steep and frankly non-developable, so it didn't have a high conservation value. This land here in Conservation Easement 2 is more gradual, and it has a very high potential to be converted, frankly, to vineyards here in Napa County. I'm located on Howe Mountain, and Howe Mountain agricultural land is some of the highest priced agricultural land in the country because of the great Cabernet Sauvignon grapes that we grow. So our Conservation Easement 2 area has a significant value because of that, and it's seen as a high priority for CAL FIRE and other people who are working to help us conserve this land. The funders for this project that are still underway, we have $1 million of U.S. Forest Service Forest Legacy funding with our name on it, and we're working on generating an additional $3 million of revenue. We're hoping the CAL FIRE Forest Legacy program kicks in about $2 million, and we're looking to raise another $1 million in a combination of hopefully the Wildlife Conservation Board as well as a private foundation that we're speaking with on this project. And the goal is for us to complete the project in late 2022. So we've got this awesome forested land. How do we get around our forest? The PUC forest has 40 miles of trails, which were created over the years by mountain bikers and hikers, also a combination of some logging roads in there as well. This is a trail map that I developed as a GIS person and was completed in September 2018. We previously did not have a trail map developed because PUC didn't actually have our recreation plan formalized. So we were hesitant to invite the community to come recreate on our land because of concerns over liability, because PUC really didn't want to get sued if somebody came onto our land and injured themselves. So we actually really didn't advertise our forest and our trails, not only the community, but to our students. On that subject, we really didn't do forestry work. We didn't manage our forest. Our forest is kind of, I hate to say it, been sitting there doing nothing for the last 100 years. And it's been serving an important ecological value, but the forest, as I mentioned, is one of our best assets that really needs to support the mission of the school as we move forward. And that's really what I'm trying to do here in my job at PUC, is make the forest support our primary mission of the school. So here we can see a trail marker in the forest. The map had numbered points on it that correspond to these trail markers. So when you're walking around the forest and you got the map and you see a 2 on the map and you see a 2 on the trail marker, you got a 1-to-1 correlation, and that can help you navigate around in the forest. In order to resolve our issues related with liability, I formed a partnership with the Napa County Regional Parks and Open Spaces District. PUC signed what's called a trail license agreement with the Open Spaces District in fall of 2019. This incorporates our forest into the formal network of open spaces parks here in Napa County. And now we're covered under the Open Spaces District's liability insurance. So now we can formally welcome our local community to come and recreate on our land, and PUC enjoys supporting our local community in this way. As part of this trail license agreement, we also added 3 miles onto the Bay Area Ridge Trail. So in this picture, we can see a dedication event of the Bay Area Ridge Trail in fall 2019. We've got some dignitaries here. This is Diane Dillon, the supervisor for my area from Napa County. We've got some board members of the Open Spaces District. This is Ryan Gregory, another Napa County supervisor. This is Janet McBride, the Bay Area Ridge Trail Executive Director. And then this right here is John Woodbury, the Executive Director of the Open Spaces District. And there at the center of it all is me. So that was a really good day, and I really enjoyed that event. So how do we access the forest? Previous access to the forest was primarily off of Angwin's Las Posadas Road. And to get to my forest, guests used to have to park in a ditch on the side of the road, as you can see here, and walk past a right to pass by permission of owner sign. So as opposed to a welcome sign, guests were greeted with no place to park, and again, a right to pass by permission sign. An issue caused by this was that parking clogged up Las Posadas Road, creating issues for a nearby CAL FIRE station. We've actually got a CAL FIRE station just down the road from where this picture is taken. So on a busy Sunday, we would have cars and bikes and dogs and then vineyard trucks with heavy equipment. And CAL FIRE would try to get an engine into service and it would have to deal with all this mess. So CAL FIRE installed these K-rails here on the corner to prevent parking from this area behind the K-rails to help kind of open up the corner a little bit. This was a really tricky situation for me because I had the head of the Sonoma Lake Napa unit of CAL FIRE and the head of the Napa County Fire Department saying, Peter, your guests are clogging up our road. Like, what are you doing to resolve that situation? So what we did was create this gorgeous recreational staging area we see here in front of us. PC created a 30-car staging area, AKA the Forest parking lot, completed with an information kiosk last year. Construction began in August 2020, and it was completed in September of 2020. The PUC Forest has become a real destination for Bay Area hikers and mountain bikers, and I like to say that the PUC Forest is one of the premier locations for forested recreation here in the Bay Area. So this is a picture of the forest parking lot on a Wednesday afternoon. We can see our kiosk here that's got a version of the trail map, some rule sets, information about what's going on in the forest, and then here is our 30-car parking area. So that corner that you saw on Las Posadas Road with the K-rails have been moved aside. That gate was opened up. We now have a sign that says, welcome to PUC Forest, and people can drive down that road and access the forest at this location. So switching gears, let's talk about forestry work. The PUC Forest straddles a prominent north-south ridgeline on the eastern edge of Napa Valley, and our vegetation communities are influenced by a combination of aspect and elevation. So we can kind of see here's a vegetation map of the forest. These green polygons are Douglas fir, ponderosa pine. The blue polygons are mixed oak, and you can see a very distinct line right here between the kind of mixed oak and Doug fir ponderosa pine that have a southwest facing aspect, so it's a little drier. And then as we get a northeast facing aspect in purple, we have our coast redwood stand. We have some tan oak here. And then as we descend further into the valley where we drop in elevation, gets a little drier, the mixed oak picks up, some valley oak, some blue oak, some chaparral. So again, it's a combination of aspect and elevation that really determine our forest types here in the forest. Conifer species on the property are Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, coast redwood, gray pine, and knobcone pine. And the hardwood species we have are tan oak, Pacific madrone, black oak, Oregon white oak, and coast live oak. Here we see a topographic map of the PUC Forest, and you can see again, here's our ridge line. This is called Ridge Road. It's one of our primary roads in the forest. So you can see right here where the elevation contours are very close together. This is where we've got a really steep descent down into the eastern Pope Valley area. Then we see our ridge line here in the middle of the forest. And then to the west of our ridge line, you can see that we have a much more gradual slope leading down into the plateau that is Angwin. The highest elevation on the property is 2,000 feet. The lowest elevation is 1,000 feet. We have an average annual rain of about 40 inches, and our rain to date this year is only 12.76 inches. So really hoping that can pick up a little bit. We get a little dusting of snow about once or twice a year, but it doesn't stick. And then occasionally we get some real snow that sticks about 2 to 3 inches about every fourth year. So current conditions in the forest, much of our forest is overgrown. The last fire was in 1931, so we have not had a fire in 90 years. Most plants are crowded and face an unnatural overabundance of competition due to the last 90 years of fire suppression in my area. And this overabundance of competition results in real stress for the plants when fighting for nutrient, water, and light resources. Animal habitat for many species is also suboptimal due to these overgrown conditions in the forest, which were again unnaturally created by the last 90 years of fire suppression in our area. Much of the forest is ripe for a modern stand replacing wildfire, and much work is needed to restore this valuable ecological and social resource. So here we see a typical view of overgrown Douglas fir and tan oak, again, due to the past 90 years of fire suppression. In a typical healthy fire regime, as you guys know, we would get a fire rolling through caused by lightning events every 5, 10, 15, 20 years. This would serve the important ecological service of clearing out some of this vegetation, resulting again in a more natural, balanced, and healthy forest. So, where do we begin our forestry work and trying to do something about this issue we have? We start on the ridgeline. Our prominent ridgeline could serve as an invaluable natural feature for CAL FIRE to prevent a fire from starting in the dry, scrubby ecosystems to the east here in the Pope Valley area, and stop a fire from starting in the east, potentially driven by the high eastern and north winds of the late falls, being accelerated by the steep rise here up our ridgeline, and then coming down into the bowl of Angwin. So really what we're trying to do as we start out our forestry work is to create a really thorough ridgeline shaded fuel break, which will help to prevent that scenario that I just mentioned. The ridgeline, which was already complete with an old logging road, was a natural starting point for ecosystem restoration and fire mitigation work. Annual projects for the past 3 seasons have created and expanded upon an increasingly effective ridgeline fuel break with a forest composition closer to historic conditions. So the first project that I undertook was a 100-foot wide strip of mastication right here smack on the center of my ridgeline. This project was conducted in January of 2019, and it was a total of 32 acres. The prescription was to masticate all trees less than 8 inches in diameter and prune the leaf trees up to 10 feet. Again, being that this work was right on our ridgeline, we really needed to have kind of a heavier impact to make sure that CAL FIRE has the best chance possible of actually stopping a fire at this ridgeline, preventing devastation over a greater area in the event of a stand replacing wildfire. The work was done by TS Logging of Boonville, cost $2,500 an acre at 32 acres for a total project cost of $80,000. My funding sources were private fundraising undertaken by PUC. The California Fire Safe Council gave us a grant for this. Napa County Firewise gave us a grant, and the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, the NRCS, also provided a grant. So here we see the 2 machines that worked on the property. On the left there, we've got an excavator with a Fecon masticating head on the boom arm. And then on the right, we've got a feller buncher also with a Fecon masticating head on it. So here is a before and after picture from the same location taken right on the ridgeline. You can see that there was really, really thick tan oak growing right on the ridgeline here, utilizing all of the sunlight that it gets. So after the work was complete, we can now actually see through the forest. And I brought on my local battalion chief right after this project was done. And basically what he told me was that before this work was done, CAL FIRE would not have basically even tried to stop a fire along this ridgeline with on-the-ground resources. It was too dangerous, and what we see right here in the road is what was known as a death tunnel by CAL FIRE, and they would not have sent any resources on this land. The photo on the right actually gives CAL FIRE the confidence to then be able to come on and try to do something about a fire on this land. Again, you know, kind of offsetting some of the impacts with the overall benefit of preventing stand replacing wildfire over a greater area. So the next project I undertook basically at the same time was a strip of hand crew thinning, also 32 acres, done in January of 2019. We can see that it was done east of the ridgeline here, going down towards the Pope and Childs Valley areas. It was, again, 32 acres directly east of the mastication. The goal for this project was to kind of slow a fire down in momentum before actually reaching the ridgeline, giving CAL FIRE a better opportunity to stop it at the ridgeline. The prescription was to cut, lop, and scatter select trees less than 8 inches and prune the leaf trees up to 10 feet. The work was done by Forestscapes out of McKinleyville. We see the crew from Forestscapes here on the right. It was $22.50 an acre at 32 acres for a cost of $72,000. The funding sources were, again, private fundraising by PUC and the California Fire Safe Council. And Forestscapes also did the pruning for the masticated area. So here we see a before and after photo from the same location on the left. That was the condition, again, looking east, going downhill from my ridgeline shaded fuel break. We can see before it was kind of an overgrown and unhealthy mess. Now we've actually got some nice spacing between our vegetation and our trees. Again, kind of recreating that natural forest composition that we had in the presence of a healthy fire regime. Restoration phase 3, hand crew thinning. This was another project undertaken in the spring and summer of 2020. You could see that we worked, again, going to the east downhill with that same desire to slow a fire's momentum down before encountering a ridgeline. You could see that I didn't extend it all the way with the other projects because right here, this actually isn't my land. And I just frankly wasn't able to get enough funds to pay to work on my neighbor's land. So I'm hoping to find ways to pay for work on his land. But from here on out, we can see this project that I did, the hand crew thinning the year before, was partly on his land. But at this point, because of the expensive nature of these projects and the limited funds I have, I had to cut it short onto just my land. This, again, was 23 acres east of the Forescapes project, 100 feet wide at 1.89 miles, aiming to slow a fire before it gets to the ridge line. The prescription was to cut and pile select trees less than 8 inches in diameter and prune the leaf trees up to 10 feet. A big shout out to the Sonoma Ecology Center, who I worked with on this project. And there we can see our friend Jason Mills leading out the crew before a day of work. This project was $3,500 a day at 22 work days for a total project budget of $77,000. This was more expensive than the hand crew thinning previously done because that was lop and scatter. And this was actually a piling prescription. And piling means more work, which is an increased cost of hand crew thinning. However, I learned between the two projects that piling is actually very important to reduce the heat to roots and trees during future fires, be they all natural fires or prescribed, which will reduce tree damage and mortality. When you do lop and scatter thinning, all of the vegetation is still there. It's just laying on the ground. So when you have a fire that rolls through, you've got a lot of heat there on the ground, which can again impact the roots below the ground as well as the cambium layer of trees. So really what's best is when you cut the vegetation, you pile it in locations away from the base of trees, and then you burn those piles, getting rid of the vegetation and not just leaving it there on site. So when a fire does come through, then it actually has less fuel that it's burning through and not just a change in the vertical nature of the fuel, making it horizontal. The funding sources for this project were private fundraising, a grant from Napa Firewise, and a grant from the California Fire Foundation. So here we see a before and after picture. Again, really thick tan oak on the left and a gorgeous thinned out forest there on our right. So next phase, fuel break maintenance. So here we see I actually did an herbicide treatment of some of the resprouting madrone and tan oaks that were part of the mastication project, resulting in 2 years of regrowth after the mastication project was done. Madrones and tan oaks resprout after mastication, and CAL FIRE recommends only having limbed up conifers on ridgeline shaded fuel breaks. So we needed to get in there and treat some of the resprouting madrones and tan oaks that were growing up. So here we can see some kind of bushy madrones and tan oaks, again, coming out of the masticated bases of the trees right on the ridgeline shaded fuel break. The NRCS actually incorporated maintenance of my fuel break via herbicide into my mastication grant they had previously given me. The work was done by EnvironTech of Vallejo. The cocktail was a combination of Garlon and a surfactant, which helps to keep the herbicide on the leaves for longer, which actually helps to make sure that it's not just the leaves that face mortality, but the Garlon gets sucked into the plant and you get more mortality of the root base. I was talking with Jason Mills, and sometimes what happens when you do these herbicide treatments, if they're not done right, the mortality is only of the foliar growth of the plant, but you don't actually kill the root base. So the plants just grow back, and that could result in all sorts of problems. I'm not the biggest fan of herbicide. I think it has its role here in forest management work. This is the only time I've used it. I'm not key on using it again, but I can see that it does have a role to play. The treatment was done via spot treatment with a spray gun basically mounted on an ATV. So an ATV just drove around the project site and sprayed these different plants as they were growing back. We did 32 acres with a 5% resprout cover of the land. The total price was $17,000. The funding source was private fundraising, as well as, again, some help from the NRCS. So here we see a madrone resprout on November 14, 2020, just before the herbicide application was applied. Here we are 2 weeks later on December 1, 2020. We can see the plant starting to shrivel. That herbicide cocktail is kicking in. And then here we are on December 14th with really almost a complete mortality of the plant. This one on the left here had actually been kind of knocked down by a timber harvest. So not all of the destruction of the plant you see was from the mortality, but yeah, all of the, the browning on the leaves was from mortality. So it took, I'm seeing, about 2 months to have a complete mortality of these resprouting trees. So speaking about that timber harvest, forest restoration phase 5 was a timber harvest that I did right along my ridgeline shaded fuel break. The mastication project addressed all of the understory vegetation less than 8 inches, but it did not address any trees larger than 8 inches. Past healthy fires in California reduced not only understory vegetation. I was on a meeting of the CAL FIRE Northern Region Prioritization Group, and I saw a study that was done looking at what percentage of tree mortality resulted from past healthy fires in our previous fire regime in California. And it again found that 80% of understory vegetation was killed, but 10% of larger trees were killed as well in healthy fires. So when we have fire suppression and we don't have fires on a regular basis, we actually get an unnatural overabundance of larger trees as well. These overstocked trees face too much competition for resources, especially water, here in our dry Mediterranean climate. We all know that there's not an overabundance of rain that we get here in California. So fire actually serves an important ecological service of reducing vegetation competition so that the trees that remain have a sustainable amount of water that they can live off of. So without fire, we get too much competition for water, and basically none of our trees are healthy as they could be as a result of that process. Dense continuous canopy cover lacks the more natural mosaic landscape that we used to see in the past, again, when California had a more natural fire regime. This is healthy for wildlife populations, which kind of require that mosaic of landscapes, as well as vegetation communities in the terms that it reduces competition, as I've discussed. And it's just more healthy for our fire ecology. When we used to have kind of natural gaps in the canopy, and then a fire rolls through and encounters one of those natural gaps in the canopy, that is a natural fuel break that stops the fire from moving forward. When we see a dense, uninterrupted stand of conifers, as we can see here in an aerial photo of my ridgeline fuel break that was before any treatment was done, fires are able to just roll like freight trains through our environment, and they don't have that kind of natural, patchy nature of our environments to slow them down at all, which is one of the things that's causing our large, modern, catastrophic wildfires. So in order to alleviate this, we need to do selective tree harvesting to restore a natural, healthy stocking level to our forests. So I started a timber operation in the fall. PUC has what's known as a non-industrial timber management plan, which is sort of like a THP you guys have all heard of, a timber harvest plan, which is only a one-off go. So with a THP, you tell CAL FIRE you want to do a timber harvest, you outline the parameters of that harvest, and you move forward with only one harvesting of trees. With a non-industrial timber management plan, what you're able to do is take an area of land and say, okay, here's the parameters of this land, here's the parameters of any future harvesting we'd like to do, and once CAL FIRE approves that, doing a harvest is as simple as just submitting what's called a notice of timber operations, which has to be filed with a signature from a registered professional forester. But then CAL FIRE looks over your plan, and if they like it, they'll just sign off on it if it meets all the regulations. So you don't have to go through the burdensome process of a timber harvest plan over and over by having what's known as a non-industrial timber management plan. The harvest was over 40 acres. I harvested 380 MBF or 380,000 board feet. A board foot of timber is 1 square foot of timber at 1 inch thick. This harvest was located on my ridge road to improve my fuel break and again, restore a more natural and healthy tree density to my ridge line. The prescription was a single tree selection of Douglas fir. When a lot of people think of timber harvesting, they think of clear cuts, and that's how a lot of harvesting is done for a number of reasons, but that's not what I'm trying to do here in the PUC forest. Our harvesting criteria of trees were trees exhibiting either a poor live crown ratio, so trees just exhibiting kind of less than vigorous growth of their needles, showing a less than healthy tree. A number of Doug firs get what's known as the conch fungus, so you see little conchs sticking out on the side of the tree. With time, once a tree gets conch fungus, it just gets more and more taken over by this fungus, degrading the growth and health of the tree, which can lead potentially to bark beetle infestation, as well as just degrading the timber quality of the trees. So you want to harvest those trees that have conch fungus when you're selecting the trees you want to harvest. We also harvested trees that just didn't have a good growth factor. Maybe they had a bend or a lean to them or a split top. And then lastly, we just harvested trees that were kind of overcrowded. Natural spacing of trees is trees, you know, I've heard different numbers, but you know, maybe 10, 15 feet apart, so that again, they don't have that competition for water and light resources. So these were the criteria we used to harvest our trees to get a more resilient spacing of our trees together. The harvest was done by Bullock Logging of Cobb, California, and we sold the timber to the Mendocino Redwood Company. And here we see logs being loaded onto a Mendocino Redwood Company logging truck. So here's a before and after picture. It was actually hard for me to get a picture that showed the difference between the before and after photo, because the nature of a selective tree harvest is that you're not going and harvesting a bunch of trees from an area. So here we can see some kind of well spaced out conifers, still a few too many. This small tree was one that was, the masticators didn't hit, but it was also too small to be commercially viable. So I've got a little bit more work to do, but here you can see a few trees that I did select. So again, we still have trees after the harvest, just with a little bit better spacing between them. So I don't really have the best before and after photo from this site, but this is what I got. So forest restoration phase 6, mini mastication. This was more mastication that was done west of my ridgeline here in January and February of 2021, and it's a 43 acre area. The focus on this point of my fuel break expansion had been east, again, trying to go downhill towards Pope and Childs Valley to slow a fire as it comes up to the ridgeline. However, one of the problems that we're having with these wind-driven fires is that embers fly over fuel breaks and land on the opposite side, creating spot fires. So we also need to be expanding our fuel break west to, again, decrease the chances of spotting on that western side of the fuel break. So this was the first westward expansion of the fuel break. The level terrain of this area and the vegetation composition merited mastication. East of my ridgeline, it's really steep and frankly not capable of having a masticator, which is one of the reasons why I chose hand crews for that area. The nature of the places west of my ridgeline, not only is it more level, but frankly, there's a lot of old dead manzanita that is a real pain for hand crews to cut and pile, and it's very expensive. Using a mini masticator, it's less than half the price, and it's just more effective at treating that vegetation. So that was why I chose a masticator for this area. The larger masticators I had for my previous project merited a heavier footprint due to the nature we were trying to really create a line in the sand on our ridge line. However, I brought on a smaller masticator to lighten the impacts of mastication on the land, because I'm very sensitive of the balance between being kind to our forest, but at the same time realizing that stand replacing wildfire is not kind to our forest, and we need to be actively managing to do something about that. So I'm really trying to walk a line, and one of the ways I did that was by bringing on this piece of equipment. The excavator masticators from before were 40,000 pounds approximately, which caused a significant amount of compaction. This machine right here only weighs 10,000 pounds. It's got rubber tracks that are much lighter on the land. And I'm told by the masticator operator that due to the large, wide tracks, it actually has fewer pounds per square inch of impact than an average human footprint. So I've really enjoyed working with the smaller masticator on the land that, again, has just been easier ecologically on the land. The prescription was to masticate select trees less than 8 inches in diameter and prune the leaf trees up to 10 feet. The work was again done by Envirotech of Vallejo. This mastication was a little less expensive because frankly, it's just not able to cut as many trees as the larger boom mounted masticator, which is good because again, we're wanting a lighter impact here as we work away from the ridge line. At 32 acres, the price was $56,000. We also had a pruning bid, which I still need to do, about $7,000 to do the pruning work on this land. The funding sources were Napa Firewise, the California Fire Foundation, as well as some private fundraising. So here we see the ASV skid steer with a Fecon masticating head on it. Here we see a before and after photo. Again, we see a significant amount of dead manzanita. That manzanita essentially resulted from a stand replacing wildfire that we had in the 1930s that was really heavy on a lot of our land. So as part of the succession process, what happened was first shrubs come up, then manzanita come up, then madrones and other hardwoods come up and shade out that manzanita. So I have so much old dead manzanita on the land that again, should have been cleared out by a natural healthy fire sometime in the last 90 years. But because of the era of fire suppression, that has not happened. And so I have to actually come in and do the work myself. Again, as you've heard me say so many times, replicating those natural clearing effects of fire. So one more little mini mastication project. I'm almost to the end here. I know we're running over time here. During the recent glass incident, which came very close to burning my forest, and I'm so lucky that my forest did not experience any fire, CAL FIRE actually installed a dozer line starting at this area on the northern part of my land, which is where we leased to a construction company called Helmer & Sons. And they did a dozed fuel break all the way through this valley here, which we call Mill Valley. And then it goes down and it enters the forest. And just a little personal message to Adriana. She had a question about why some forestry work she saw on my land recently involved a bunch of trees that had been pushed over with root balls that had stuck up. That was the result of a dozed fuel break by CAL FIRE that resulted from the recent glass incident. The fire, when they put this in, was north of me, and there was one day when the winds were looking to blow southeast, so they were worried the winds would blow the fire southeast into Childs Valley, and then the fire would come up the hill into Angwin. So again, CAL FIRE, while they recognized my shaded fuel break as a good tool, they didn't think it would be effective enough to stop a fire. So they put a dozer line through this valley area, which is much more clear, much more effective at stopping a fire. That being said, if I hadn't done my ridgeline shaded fuel break, I think it's very possible CAL FIRE would have dozed my entire fuel break. So while some of these forestry operations we're doing have impacts on the land, again, they're less impactful than either a stand replacing wildfire or dozed fuel breaks, which we're starting to see pop up more and more across our landscapes. So here we can see a picture of Mill Valley. We could see the dozed fuel break that CAL FIRE was put in. I took this the day after I returned from my evacuation from the glass fire. And then we can see the project area there, where essentially I'd like to do a strip of mastication right next to the valley here to help a fire slow down before it reaches this dozed fuel break, helping CAL FIRE increase the chances of actually stopping a fire on this line. Project area is 28 acres at 100 feet wide and 2.3 miles long. Again, $17.50 an acre at 28 acres, that's $49,000. The funding sources are Napa Firewise and private fundraising. And I am so lucky again that this line was not put to the test during the glass incident. Forest Restoration Phase 8, hand crew thinning. I've got a project actually coming up here next Monday. We're gonna keep thinning downhill east from our ridgeline fuel break. Previous efforts had been to basically do a linear treatment right next to the fuel break. Basically, I'm trying to complete a 500-foot wide fuel break spanning my ridge line. And then from there, doing more strategic thinning activities. The kind of amorphous polygons you see here were chosen for thinning based off of their vegetation types. You can kind of see where my mouse is here and here, some holes between the thinning area. That's actually where we have a primarily tan oak overstory, which has a really light tan oak understory, which is odd. So there are areas that are already kind of naturally clear and don't need a lot of hand crew thinning before they are ready for a prescribed fire. However, the areas for this upcoming project area are really thick and do need some treatment. So the project start date is this coming Monday, which is why I don't have any pictures from the project. It's going to be done by the California Conservation Corps. It's 48 acres east of our ridge line, again, based off of vegetation community. The prescription will be to cut and pile select trees less than 8 inches DBH and prune the leaf trees up to 10 feet. The funding source is actually a CCC grant to Napa Firewise using California Prop 68 funding. The value to me would be about $3,500 an acre at 48 acres for a total project value to me of, again, $168,000. Next one that I'm very excited about, I've got a planned prescribed fire coming up. You can see the polygons here outlined in red. Those are my burn units. There are areas that have already been thinned or a little bit here that hasn't been thinned, but again, is already naturally clear and ready for a fire. I'm planning it for March, April 2021, and it's 23 acres. Here we see a picture of a gorgeous thinned forest that's ready for a prescribed fire. This thinning work was done by Jason Mills and his crew from the Sonoma Ecology Center. Again, we're doing burns to follow up our thinning work, and the burn units utilize trail networks as burn boxes. So I'm working with the trail network that I already have so that I don't have to put in new line. And I'm just thinning throughout my trail network. And then that trail network allows me to have some kind of natural burn units that I can then do prescribed fire on. The burn plan was created by Phil Dye of Prometheus Fire Consulting, and the crew will be supplied by Dr. Sasha Barrelman and her crew from the North Bay Prescribed Fire Training Council. I'm hoping to use Phil as the burn boss, but he's actually out on medical leave right now. He had a surgery on his Achilles tendon, so I might have to have a burn boss from the crew Firestorm come do this burn for me. The cost of the burn plan was $5,000, and the cost for the burn boss to execute the work will also be about $5,000. So I'm looking at a total project budget of about $10,000, and I'm using private funds to make that happen. So what's next in the forest? I've got future plans. I'd like to touch base with you guys again in a year on some of the other plans that I have coming up and seeing me execute them. What I'm really hoping for is to get a forest health grant from CAL FIRE. I've got a lot of work remaining to be done. And honestly, much of my annual efforts here at PUC involve fundraising and grants to just help raise the money that I need to do my forestry work. That's not a very good use of my time. I'm hoping to get some grant dollars from CAL FIRE so I can spend more time out in the forest actually getting forestry work done. So Napa Firewise has a grant writer named Tracy Kettleman, who's an RPF, and she's working with me on a CAL FIRE Forest Health grant on a combination of not only my property here, which we can see outlined in purple, but also on the McAllister property here to the north of me, which is a 700-acre private forest owned by a gentleman named Chris McAllister. We can see in purple on this map all of the treatments that I've already done, but as you can see, I've got a lot of work to go, being different types of thinning based off of different vegetation alliances, some mastication, some prescribed fire. It's probably going to be a total of 1,600 acres, grant ask of $5 million that will need to be executed over 4 years, which will frankly be a bit of a challenge. It's really easy to ask for grant dollars, but it's hard to spend grant dollars. You know, a lot of people are frankly gung-ho to try to get grant dollars secured, but they're not really ready to take on the forestry work and planning that it takes to execute those grant dollars. So I, after a few years on this job and I've gained some experience, am now frankly ready to take on this task in conjunction with Napa Firewise, as well as working in conjunction with Able Forestry from Eureka, which is the consulting firm that will do the work for Chris McAllister. So fingers crossed I get that grant. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Do we have any questions for me?
Great presentation.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I put it in the chat box. Did you calculate the effects of your projects on greenhouse gas emissions from the work you did and carbon sequestration, plus or minus, short-term, long-term, on the remaining forest?
That is an excellent question. So these types of calculations are involved when you do CAL FIRE forest health grants, because they want to know, essentially the equation is by reducing some of this vegetation, we are, and especially burning it, we are taking some of the carbon out of the forest. The idea is that then by preserving our forests and making sure they don't burn and stand replacing wildfires, we have an overall net benefit to carbon sequestration. I will say that, again, it's part of the natural process of our forests that, you know, periodically some of the understory does get burned and return in the carbon then returns to the atmosphere. Then the understory grows back and the carbon returns to the earth and kind of that source sink relationship. I have not done that for the work that I have already completed, but we're working potentially on some of these calculations for the upcoming forest health grant. But unfortunately, I do not have that information for you at this time.
And what about the soils, the carbon sequestration of the soils? Has that been, do you look at that as well? My understanding is that the soils actually sequester more carbon than the trees.
You know, actually, I do not know the answer to that. I am a humble one-person shop here in the PUC forest. And so if I can be honest with you, you saw that the title of our forest is the Pacific Union College Demonstration and Experimental Forest. We are registered with CAL FIRE as a demonstration and experimental forest. I am eager to start getting some of these experiments on the land to answer some of these questions that you have, but I don't really have the ability to do it myself. And the research that we do in the forest with undergrads is still gaining momentum and frankly not that sophisticated due to the nature that it's only undergrads. So with time, I'm hoping to get more graduate students and sophisticated organizations reaching out to me to try to kind of do some of these experiments and research studies to answer some of these great questions that you're bringing up here. So again, you guys know anybody that might be interested, my contact information is here. Please have somebody reach out to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is Stephen Soin. Hey, you know, I don't know, Peter, if you know Bill Stewart at UC Berkeley, he does forestry and carbon sequestration stuff. I'll try. Let's talk in the future, and maybe we can put you guys together so that you can talk about what the possibilities are here.
Sure. That would be great. Yeah, if you want to write down my email address and maybe email him and CC me on it and we can get connected, that'd be great.
Great.
Peter,
this is
sorry, Kim, go for it.
I just want to toss out, the Conservation Fund has done some really great work on the carbon sequestration project and how to do it on a pretty large forest. So it would be worthwhile for you to touch base with those folks to just kind of get a sense of what kind of cost investment it takes to monitor something over a significant amount of time to be able to qualify for that type of thing.
Kim, who did you suggest he contact?
The Conservation Fund.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay, I'll look into that. Thank you.
Peter, I've got more of a logistical question here. A great presentation. Thanks so much for the numbers and breaking all that down. I think you're really like paving a way and setting a template for many others to follow. I'm just wondering if you put any thoughts towards like the costs associated with maintaining this work over time, and if you think those costs are going to come down, or how can we work towards sustaining all these noble efforts?
I love all these questions here. So as much as possible, what I'm trying to do is restore a natural fire regime to the land. As we talked about in this presentation, fire used to serve a very important ecological service of kind of maintaining our forests and the balance in those forests. So as much as possible, I'm hoping to get the forest thinned and logged so that then I can just have periodic prescribed fires helping maintain that stuff. I'm not quite to the planning level yet of, I'm still kind of executing some of this work. I'm still figuring out what the timeline and cost of my maintenance is. But Jason brings up an important point, especially when asking for grant dollars. And this is just a little advice to those people out there applying for grants. Grantors love to see that you are considering maintenance work in your plans, because that's the nature of vegetation. You can do some management activities, but the vegetation grows right back. So yeah, maintenance is an important part of that. I'm hoping to use prescribed fire as much as possible, which is frankly very cost effective compared to some of this thinning work. The average per acre cost of my prescribed fire coming up is $500. And that's actually on the expensive side, because again, I'm writing my own burn plan and hiring my own burn boss. When working with prescribed burn associations, which you guys have a very active one over there in Sonoma County, those costs can further be reduced. So I know that prescribed fire isn't the ultimate answer for everyone in every location, but that's how I'm trying to get a cost-effective maintenance of my forested land here once we get the forest ready to host fire, which I'm just getting to that point now.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Peter.
And I guess it probably goes without saying that as we start seeing more and more of these fires just come through anyway on their own, the next one may be free.
Yeah, that's true. And so what I need to be doing is, yeah, getting my forest ready to have that free maintenance service roll right through it. That's what I'm all about.
Hard to get more cost effective than that.
Amen.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. One had to do with concerns about invasive species. I mean, anytime you go into bring in heavy equipment, there's the risk of not only the introduction, but the spread of invasive plant species. Were there any hygiene practices for bringing in equipment? And also another question was pre and post monitoring for biological utilization of that area of the forest where you did the work. You know, were there bird surveys, other endangered threatened species surveys, pre and post planned? And just a comment, we all know that grants usually just cover maybe 3 years if you're lucky of maintenance. You know, that the planning and budgeting of ongoing maintenance, which can be a lifetime, is going to be a fixed budget item.
Excellent. Okay, some good points. First of all, in terms of the invasive species, yes, it's a requirement that any contractor that brings equipment onto the land has to do a thorough cleaning of that equipment beforehand. That includes the heavy equipment, any trucks that are brought in, even down to the level of their shoes. I try to do my best to make sure that all of those practices are enforced as much as possibly can be. In terms of the biological surveys, under my non-industrial timber management plan, there is an outline of the different species that we have on the properties and mitigation measures that need to be taken to help preserve those species. So I did take all those mitigation measures. Again, I'm only a one-person shop here, so I don't really have the ability to go out and do surveys myself on a continual basis of the animal species here on the property. I'm definitely committed to helping keep my forest friendly to wildlife. But again, I would argue that not doing treatments in our forests and having stand replacing wildfires is ultimately what is more harmful and effective on wildlife populations. So while there was probably some short-term impacts on wildlife populations in terms of noise disturbance and alteration in the vegetation community, I would say that restoring our vegetation communities to more natural levels and preventing stand replacing wildfire is ultimately what's best for our wildlife species. But again, that's my opinion. And last but not least, in terms of maintenance costs, you're spot on that grants only revolve on a 3-year cycle. I'm doing my best to get kind of a regular budget going for my forestry work. You know, I have a very humble department budget here, which is one of the reasons why timber harvesting is important, because timber harvesting, again, not only is an important vegetation management tool to try to restore balance to our forests, but it's the only practice we saw in this presentation that actually generates revenue instead of taking it. So I'm trying to work not only in conjunction with grants, but also timber harvesting revenue to be able to generate the funds that I need to maintain this land. That being said, it's kind of a year-by-year struggle for me and for all of us. Like, we're all trying to get projects done on a year-by-year basis. This work is really expensive, and the nature of the modern era of stand replacing wildfires has really taken off. And I'd say the last 5 years since the Valley Fire in Cobb, California in 2015. So, you know, I would say levels of organization sophistication from me all the way to CAL FIRE are coming up with ways to continue to pay for and maintain this work on an annual basis. So that's a developing project and an excellent point.
Yeah, great presentation, by the way. And thank you so much for sharing all of your endeavors. Just a thought, I mean, Devin mentioned the use of cameras and, you know, for pre and post monitoring. And I would assume as a part of a university that you could potentially utilize students with monitoring, and it could become a part of the ongoing program now.
Absolutely. And we do have a professor of biology named Dr. Floyd Hayes. He is our kind of animal guy here in the department. He has wildlife cameras all over the property. And now he's getting to the point where he's wanting to put them in the areas where I've done forestry work to monitor animal populations there. So thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, we are starting to work in that direction 100%.
Excellent. Thank you.
Peter, a couple questions. I was thinking, is it like feasible or reasonable at all to consider having your like recreationists pay a parking fee or something? Do you think that could ever fundraise in any meaningful way, or is that just like a drop in the bucket?
So that's a good question. The thing about charging an entrance fee is that then you take on some of those liability concerns because people are paying you money for a service. As it is now, if somebody wants to come and walk on my land out of their own fruition, they're putting the liability on themselves. If I start making money off of people, that changes that equation. So I've actually just launched a program called Friends of the Forest. You know, many organizations like mine kind of have a Friends of organization. And yeah, we just started Friends of the Forest at an annual $100 a year membership level, where you get, you know, a quarterly newsletter, you get information about unique recreational and educational opportunities, information about, you know, volunteer opportunities. And yeah, that's how we're kind of trying to guide the vast amount of volunteer energy that's interested in supporting me here in the forest, as well as trying to raise some money from the recreation here in the forest.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the other thing I noticed was that Napa Firewise Council is a big contributor. Do they have like sustain, like, yeah, how is their funding sustained? Or do they see themselves being a supporter for a long time, or is it kind of just like getting you up and running?
Sure. So the Napa Communities Firewise Foundation, which is the county level body that oversees all of the fire safe councils in Napa County, is given a $100,000 a year annual budget by the Napa County Fire Department. So we spend about $20,000 of that on overhead, and the Napa County, Napa Firewise every year does an $80,000 grant program to the fire safe councils. In the past, the way they used to divide that up when we had fewer fire safe councils, we only had around 8 in the past, every fire safe council would get $10,000. So the first Napa Firewise grant that I got for my first bout of mastication was a $10,000 grant. Frankly, $10,000 is a bit of a drop in the bucket. There's a lot of places where you can't get enough meaningful work that's actually going to make an impact for $10,000. So Napa Firewise is increasingly channeling the funding that it has to places where it can make a bigger difference. The Angwin Fire Safe Council in the community of Angwin has a residence of about 4,500 people. The next largest fire safe council under us was Deer Park, which is a community just below us towards St. Helena at 1,500 residents. And then all the other fire safe councils there were smaller communities of about 300 or 400 people. So Angwin here up on a hill with one road in and out, not only has a large population, but also is uniquely threatened, frankly, for a paradise-esque situation when that town almost got wiped off the map a few years ago. So Napa Firewise is increasingly putting funding into Angwin. And every year, yeah, last year they gave me $53,000, and this year they're giving Angwin $80,000. So I'm getting more and more funding from Napa Firewise. This is touching on a point that I've brought up several times in this meeting. You know, we don't have enough funding here in the state of California to, well, let me rephrase that. We just need more funds to be generated on different levels to help pay for the vegetation management work that's needed. And communities cannot be reliant on the state and federal government to make that happen. I think there's a model where counties generate funding potentially through some kind of a tax or bond measure, although I'm not a policy person and I don't know the answer to that. But I think we need our counties to be generating the revenue that's needed for vegetation management within the counties. And given the cost of stand replacing wildfires on our local economies, I think doing vegetation management work can more than pay for itself. And there's lots of models that show that. So Napa Firewise is increasingly putting pressure on the Napa County government to come up with a way for the government to fund Napa Firewise somewhere in the range of $2 to $4 million a year for the funding that is needed for vegetation management here within the county. So that's a model that we've been pushing for, and I'm hearing we might start to see some results from that, but that's a discussion, frankly, that's above my head. So that's kind of how Napa Firewise is working to secure some of this funding. Because before this, one of the main pots of large funding was these CAL FIRE grants, being the Forest Health Grant or the Fire Prevention Grant. All the people in this room have heard of these grants, and too many people are relying on them, and there's just not enough money. Napa Firewise and myself have applied for these grants numerous times and been turned down. So again, we can't be relying on the state government at a community level to help protect our wildlands and our homes and frankly lives. And I think that the counties really need to step up in their role to provide the funding to our Firewise organizations to help fund this work. Because even if the state or county governments had funding available, the government itself is not allowed to just knock on doors and say, excuse me, we're coming on your private land and we're doing work, because we believe in private land rights here in America. So the fire safe councils provide the important link between private landowners and funding sources in order to be able to get work done on private lands. So that's why I see the Firewise communities as a really important conduit to take funds from higher levels and guide them towards where they're needed on private lands all over our communities.
And can I ask a question here? One thing that I'm aware of with, the fact that funding is actually tight all around, there's some agencies like the Fire Safe Sonoma and others that are actually really focusing on the 0 to 5, the home hardening for really protecting property and lives. And then there's this question of like, okay, so then it's a good idea to have a buffer around communities to have shaded fuel breaks so that those communities can be protected. So the question I have is, then you're talking about, trying to prevent stand replacement fires, which help in the long run with habitat and carbon sequestration. So I think the question that I think is more of a philosophical question is, at what point do you actually allow the forests to be the mess that they are and concentrate, because of a lack of funds in many ways, just on the areas that's close to the community. So in your case, how far do you go out, and does Napa Firewise or Fire Safe Council identify your land as that critical buffer?
That is a very important issue that you raised there. I've heard higher level debates about, some people go as far as to say that forest management activities are not shown to save homes. What saves homes is defensible space related issues. And there's definitely something to that argument, because we can treat forested lands all surrounding a community, but then if a fire 2 miles away spots and sends embers up and it lands in somebody's yard and burns their home down, then our forest management activities didn't save that home. That being said, if we're treating our forests on these larger landscapes, we're less likely to have some of these higher intensity fires that could send spots towards these homes in the first place. So frankly, the answer is that we need to be doing both. And then it's really tricky, where do we guide our limited funding towards one or the other? One of the reasons why Napa Firewise has supported me so much is because the PUC forest and the nature of where I'm located, kind of east and northeast of Angwin, and the local topography, my large area of land really affects the community of Angwin, and it's easy to get grant dollars onto one private landowner's land. The logistics of distributing funds to a lot of different private landowners, and the project management and the inspections and the landowner permissions is somewhat daunting. So that's one of the challenges if we're going to get larger levels of funding to go towards helping do defensible space issues. So 3 counties in California they were LA County, Napa County, and one more I can't remember, recently got $1 million grant from the California Fire Safe Council specifically to do defensible space in disadvantaged communities, being economically disadvantaged, also focusing on homes owned by senior citizens, as well as people with physical disabilities. So Napa Firewise is starting to have a pot of funds where we can hire contractors to go and do treatment of individual yards, maybe in the range of around $3,000 a yard, you know, removing bushes, doing management of some of that area. This is a really tricky problem, also partly because, you know, people are very sensitive about their yards. So what if a contractor comes onto somebody's yard and cuts their prize oleander or something like that? So it really requires a lot of in-depth project management where a project manager comes onto a home site, meets with the homeowner, outlines the scope of work, then works with the crew to execute that scope of work, and then the project manager returns to make sure that the homeowner is satisfied and the work was done up to scope. So that's a very important part of the equation, but as you can see, it's very logistically challenging. But frankly, I'm a little uncomfortable with these discussions of making it an either or. We need to be doing both. And, you know, here in our areas, we have homes that are worth $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. That work can fund either, that amount of money can fund either a lot of forest management work or a lot of defensible space work. So we're really behind the game on getting ahead of this problem where doing forest management and defensible space can save a lot more money than it costs these insurance companies to pay out the claims on these homes. So a big mouthful there, but yeah, you raise a very important issue.
Well, thanks very much, Peter, for your presentation. That was awesome. I think everybody's here captivated 45 minutes after our meeting time. So thank you for this great information.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to present to this group. I know it went a little long, but I wanted to give you guys a very thorough kind of game plan of what I've been doing and what I'm trying to do moving forward. So I'm very lucky to have the support of a lot of people in this work that I'm taking on my shoulders. And yeah, I just look forward to continuing to network with you guys so that we can kind of, you know, all boats rise with the tide. So let's all make this happen together.
Yes, yes, yes. You have 19 people or stayed around. It's fantastic.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for everyone for coming today. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. And I will be posting this, the recording of the presentation and the whole meeting to our website in the next week or so. So you can share it around. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.